everyone. We are going to give it about 30 seconds as a quick get everybody in your seats. So 30-second warning. Today is Tuesday, March the 4th, 2025. This is the Budget and Finance Committee meeting as scheduled. So I'm ready to call this meeting to order. And as we do so, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and rise if you're able. And yes, good morning, everyone. I'm going to take a moment here as we do some housekeeping, invite you to do what I'm doing, which is to silence my phone. There we go. So again, a few other items of housekeeping before we move forward. If you are watching and listening to us online, we do have a number of people here that are online. Just please be aware that you're welcome as we take comments and questions. Type those into the chat box. Use as many boxes as you feel you need. We will cover those as needed. We'll aggregate them together here. The other item of housekeeping is, again, if you are watching via online, via YouTube, you're hearing and seeing things that are about 20 to 30 seconds behind what's happening in real time. So if we miss you due to timing, we will come back and read your comment at the end of the meeting. That being said, we can establish quorum. We are missing Mickey Jacobs from our committee today, as well as John Click. But we have quorum here, and we're pleased to be able to move forward. I'll start with 1.04 and read our meeting procedures. The governing board and its committees conduct all their meetings in compliance with Arizona Planned Community Association open meeting laws per ARS 33-1804 and in concert with RCSCW bylaws, policies, and standing rules. Parliamentary procedures, as outlined in the most recent edition of Robert's Rules of Order, will also be followed in all meetings as appropriate, consistent with Bylaw 3.07, Procedures for Owner-Member Meetings, and Standing Rules number 2 and number 3. As a part of those rules, any questions or comments come first to me as the committee chair, but we'll make sure that we get to those in due course as we can. We have a full agenda today, and again, as we move into the meeting, just be aware, again, if you're new to the meeting, if you're new to the Budget and Finance Committee meeting, you can go back to our September 3rd meeting for a fuller introduction of all the committee members, our backgrounds, and who is who. Moving on then, we've read meeting procedures and all our housekeeping, so we are in order. Number 2, approving our meeting minutes from February 18th, 2025. Committee, did you see anything any questions? We have consensus, therefore, to accept those minutes as written. We'll move now into new business. We'll start with our workers' compensation insurance renewal. Now, this is an important part. If you remember, Budget and Finance Committee looks at budget, of course, and we're in the midst of that budget season right now. We look at all of our policies, our financial policies as well, and we also look at a number of our insurance renewals as well as our investment progress. So today we look at our workers' compensation renewal, and we're going to have our head of HR, Kirsten Peterson, as well as Brian Wilder, who is our lead and our principal from Marcia McLennan. So they'll step up now and introduce themselves so that we can review the presentation. So we'll start with you, Kirsten.
Good morning. Thank you, Director Novello and committee members. Thank you for joining us this morning. We are going to hear from Brian Wilder, who is the principal at Marsh McLennan and manages our workers' compensation program and works hand in hand with the HR department and finance. He's been working with the association for just a little over 5 years, and I'd like to bring him up so that he can walk you through our most recent renewal process that we went through for the new year. So with further ado, that's Mr. Brian Wilder.
Thank you, Kirsten. Appreciate it. Sorry about that. And thank you, Director Novello, and thank you to the committee to have me here today. I appreciate it. And thank you for the opportunity to work with Recreation Centers of Sun City West. It's been a great partnership. And with that, I'll just dive into the presentation. So here's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to kind of outline the current situation, where we stand, get into what's really driving the premium dollars associated with workers' compensation. And that's really comes down to the actual losses compared to what's expected for losses. Get into who determines the rates when it comes to workers' compensation, which is what we refer to as NCCI, the National Council on Compensation Insurance. Then get into a little bit of the claims analysis, not going too in the weeds to protect some of the privacy of individuals. And also, let's talk about what we're doing now and what we continue to do to drive down claims, which ultimately drives down cost of the program. And before I jump into this just yet, let me just say that it is improving. Okay, we're in the midst of a few challenging years because of some claims that we work through. And the way that the workers' comp is set up with the experience modification is it is rearward looking. So I'll dive into it, and later we can discuss kind of the objectives and what's coming out of it. But the takeaway is it is improving and we're tracking well. So this is the workers' comp. This is going to be a little bit of an eye chart. I'm not going to expect everyone to understand what all this means, but I will point out a few things on the slides. There's 2 class codes that make up. Okay, those class codes are determined by, there's a description of what falls in for what the employees are doing, so the description of operations. And then from there, there's a body that we'll touch on later called that NCCI that from there says, based on this class code, across the states that we represent, this is how many losses should happen on an annual basis for that class code, and that's how they establish kind of the rates that go to the insurance company. So if you look up there, you have the class codes, you have the estimated payroll that's associated with the rate times the payroll, you ultimately get to the premium. A lot of this stuff is stuff that is completely outside of the control of this organization. But the one number that I'm going to dive deeper into is that third line down in the premium breakdown. It says experience modification. And that is the number that we're tackling, that we've been tackling for several years and will continue to tackle. And ultimately, over the next few years, we expect that to go down to lead to less premium dollars overall. So the why. Ultimately, the way that with workers' comp, with the experience modification that just spoke about, it looks at a 3-year window. Okay, and that 3-year window is not this current year, but 3 years prior. So what this slide illustrates is that you have the claim years of 2021, 2022, and 2023. The block in the green is actual losses, and then the block in the yellowish color is expected losses. So as you can see from that, 2021 was what we would consider a very good year. 2022 was a poor year, and then 2023 was, I would say, also a poor year as we move forward. And let's get to the why. So ultimately, because the bucket, if you will, of expected losses, there's significantly more actual, it's going to hurt that experience modification, which will lead to more premium dollars. So this is kind of the bad, but it will get better. Okay, that's that body that I talks about that governs the rates. It's not the insurance company. It's actually done by this group, NCCI, and they control 39 states across the United States, and they use the class codes and the rates to determine the best rate per the class code. Again, another eye chart here, but this is where it's going to start trending well. The blue columns show the experience modification factor. 1.0 is what we consider average. Okay, so it's in our best interest to be below a 1.0. Above 1.0 is above average, which ultimately leads to more cost. So if you look at the blue blocks, 121, 119, 1.13, 1.64, and 1.77 is today's EMOD. However, let me point out to you the red block, which is the loss ratio. Okay, we'd like that loss ratio to be as low as possible. What for a workers' compensation, what they consider to be a strong loss ratio would be under 50%. 2022, 412% loss ratio. Okay, so that's not good. But then as you drop, 44% is great and 14% is excellent, and we're trending that way this year. So like I talked about earlier, experience modification is a rearward-looking instrument. So it was 3 years in the past. So now we're tracking well, and we expect to see a lot better numbers moving forward. And I will say to the committee and then the entire audience that a lot of that is due to Kirsten, Cliff, and the team here of proactive engagement on claims management to get that down along with the insurance company. And I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. Again, I apologize for some of these eye charts, but I think they're effective. The total incurred is the blue block. 2022, you see significant dollars, but then it's dropping down to where it was roughly 74,000, 33,000. And then the claim count, which is that red block, that's dropping as well. So the behaviors are changing, and we are trending in a favorable direction. Okay, let's talk about the injuries themselves. Like who is getting injured? I don't mean specific people, I mean age and some other things along those lines. As expected, this is similar to who is employed at this organization. We have some people that in the 46 to 55 range, and the majority falls in the 56 to 65 range. But that's as expected, but that's where the injuries fall. And also what part of the body. Anytime we have claims activity, our team, along with the insurance company, looks at any trends we might have to get out and educate the employee force on how to do things differently. But there's not a lot of trend activity. And it is worth pointing out here that the claims in 22, a lot of those are what I would consider outliers. These are not injuries that we would expect to see in an organization like yours, and a few of them were just these random events that were outside of the control of the organization. So no real trends to point out at this point. Okay, CopperPoint is the insurance company that insures the workers' compensation. And here are some underwriter comments, and these are associated with my team's comments as well. 2021, 2022, coming out of COVID, across the board, we saw spikes in experience modification. So some of the challenges that you underwent, we saw across our book of business. You have a fantastic closing ratio. What that means is that when a claim comes in, the team is very good about being engaged and proactive on that claim to try and get it closed as quickly as possible. Oftentimes that's outside of anyone's control, but if there is a control component, we engage to get those closed quickly, and that's advantageous. Sharp decrease in indemnity claims. Indemnity claims are loss of time, so people that are unable to work. We try and get people, if able, to get back to work as quickly as possible, because then, well, for one, it's good for them to get back to work, and two, that helps with the experience modification and ultimately the cost of the insurance. And then specifically, we were at 7 in 2022, 3 in 2023, and only 1 in 2024 when it came to indemnity claims. So fitting with the narrative of it is improving over the last few years. We have no claims on temporary total disability, no litigated claims, which is a big good job there. Litigation leads to significant dollars, as we all know. And yeah, I already mentioned that a few times. And what is the team doing to continue on this trend? The two main items are a proactive claims handling approach. That's Kirsten and the team here. That's my group along with CopperPoint. We're very engaged to get those down. Quarterly claim reviews, that means we all meet, we go through every single claim above a certain threshold and figure out ways to expedite to get those moving along to get them closed as quickly as possible. Also, a dedicated risk control services with both CopperPoint, the insurance company, and us as an agent. We do employee education, especially if we're seeing any trends, even though we haven't identified that, but we'll come out and do education. That's both in person and online. We'll do on-site visits to educate as well. There's a nurse triage program that can help with the expediting claims, and then the return to work program too. So just all working together to keep on this path to get claims down. And I don't think it made a slide, but the current experience modification is 1.77. If, and this is some assumptions we have to make, if it continues to trend the same way, next year we expect the experience modification to be in the neighborhood of 1.50. But the following year, when that 2022 bad claim activity falls off that experience modification, we're seeing it to be below 0.80. So if the question to the group is, when do we expect this to get significantly better? It would be in the 2027 timeframe when the 2022 claim year falls off of that experience modification. And that is assuming that you continue to track well.
So real quick for the committee, we have in our packets, it's not a slide, but we do have that background, and thank you for that very much. So you can see the impacts over time. I believe that's also attached for our fellow residents who are here, if you wanted to see some of that. So, and please proceed. Just wanted to point out that we do have the information here.
Okay, excellent. Yes, and that really sums it. That comes to the end. I can answer any questions you may have, but again, the big takeaway is rough year in 2022 that was outside your control, making progress to get that better. And it was in the supplemental information, but it wasn't on the slides. We do market it every year to different insurance companies to see if there are better insurance company partners from both the cost and a service standpoint. In the last few years, CopperPoint has been the best partner to work with, but we do actively shop it too as well. So, do you have any questions?
Okay. Chris.
So first, thank you. On slide 3, you pointed out experience modification as a driving indicator, which makes all the sense in the world, what you just mentioned. What I'm curious to know is what else on slide 3 is directly under our control for cost?
So there's nothing. So that's the crazy thing with workers' comp is the way that it works with workers' comp is that the insurance company does an assessment, they look at your payroll, they look at your class codes, and they look at the losses. And then at that point, they can assign what we call a scheduled credit or a scheduled debit, depending on it's running with the losses. Okay, CopperPoint does have a scheduled debit on the account, but that's the only thing in the control of the insurance company. The only thing in your control, though, is that experience modification. Well, there's one more thing, the alcohol and drug-free workplace credit. That is in your control as well. So that's a 5% credit that the organization receives because you do have a drug program, I apologize. But everything else is just a standard flow through that's outside of your control. And that's why if you have a tough claim year or a few cut together, it's very challenging from a workers' comp perspective because you got to work yourself through it because it's going to stay with you for multiple years.
Okay. How about the premium discount? Did we earn that, or how is that delivered, or why is that delivered?
That's just part of their formula that they put in there. That's not something we even negotiate. That just kicks in the formula with CopperPoint.
Okay, so we didn't necessarily earn it.
No, not necessarily. I'd love to say you did, but that's always something that just flows right in where I don't even know how they determine that.
Thank you.
Good, Rick.
I'll raise hand to recognize myself, not just to kind of jump in as well on what Chris was saying. I should also add, and perhaps this is a direct question for Kirsten if you wanted to comment, but we've had, rec centers have had a very challenging time of retaining a safety officer. So Kirsten, if you could speak to us a little bit. I know that that's something, I believe the I don't want to mix us up here, but we have operating budget that we heard about last time. One of the proposed staffing changes is to make that role a full-time role. Am I correct?
That is a very good question, and yes, in reviewing all of the processes and things that we're responsible for, it became very obvious and apparent that the role needed to be expanded, and so we have made that a full-time position. And we had a good person here that was helpful and decided to retire. So we are in the process of, and in the midst literally of interviewing at this moment for the position of the safety coordinator. So it will be a full-time position that will work with me and work with the insurance companies to expand any kinds of outreach and programs that we might currently have and put new eyes on it.
Yeah, I don't know, but the question I would have about that is, I assume that the role of that safety coordinator, that position, would be at least in part targeted toward making sure we achieve these goals, right? That we're working together to keep our employees safe, and also that it will continue to improve our EMOD as a result.
Absolutely. So there's no us and them. It's definitely a partnership between Human Resources as part of the safety coordinator, and that person will work hand in hand when if we have an incident, we'll making sure that we're doing the investigation, which we do already, and researching to see if there was anything that could have been done differently, making sure that if there was things that could be done differently, that we're communicating that out, putting that part of our training program, making sure that we're disseminating that information across the board. And then also working, right now we have a very robust, and I think Brian spoke to it, we have a robust transitional duty program, which has been in place since I came on board. So what we do is we look at every person that comes through with, maybe they have some sort of an injury that can be accommodated, returning them to work, so that we don't have folks sitting at home, but we're creative within the restrictions that person has, and making sure that they are still providing value add to the organization and bringing them back on board so that we don't have that time loss. So the safety coordinator will certainly work with myself and the work comp group to make sure that we're being as expansive as we can. And I think we've seen a huge decline in the number of hours that used to be time loss.
Thank you, Kristen. And again, the goal here is for us to all understand. I had the benefit of hearing Brian's past updates to budget and finance, but for the rest of the committee, there's a lot of technical detail and nuance in those attachments about how an EMOD is calculated. So if you do have questions on that or anything, let us know. The goal, again, is to manage our workers' compensation renewal rates, for lack of a better phrase. Everything continues to increase in workers' compensation insurance. We understand that, so I hate to just automatically assume, but that's how it goes. But as we continue to manage this, we would expect to see better management of the renewal rates as well. But anyway, any other questions from committee members? Ed?
Yeah, regarding the transitional duty, do we track total time lost, and then as a percentage what the transitional duty is, to see what the positive effect of it is?
Absolutely. Yeah, each person has their own tracking, and then as an overall, we can certainly look back and say, okay, this person would have been off based on a healthcare provider's note of 2 months, and instead we're able to reach out to the healthcare provider and say, we have transitional duties available. Here's the list of activities that we anticipate having this individual do. Do you agree? And we haven't had any that have turned us down yet, so we are able to bring those folks back. So yes,
Okay,
we
so
are watching that.
The metric would show that the transitional duty as a percentage has been increasing since we had that emphasis.
Absolutely.
So you report on that, okay. What about our accident and lost time incident rates? Do we track that?
Yes,
Okay,
We do.
okay,
So that's all part of the figures that we work through, and we do a quarterly claim review so that we're looking at any kind of actual time loss. So we are definitely tracking all of that information.
so then looking rearward, we can look at what data we have and see how that affected our rate because of that. Okay.
Yes.
As far as what we do when we have an accident, you know, the key is if they're gonna be not able to return to work the next day, do we have a process with our different operating departments as what's the decision? You know, do we look at transitional duty the next day, or, you know, it's really, I think it's really critical that that first day is really important, and how does the process work for when there is an accident as far as trying to do that?
Certainly. So the process works when we have an injured employee. Our first goal is, of course, to make sure that we get them, if there's medical intervention necessary, we make sure that we get them to the appropriate carrier. We're doing our post-accident things that Brian spoke about. We do the drug and alcohol testing at the post-accident medical date time. And then after that, we're waiting for the person to return to us with their notification from the medical provider, healthcare provider. And on that healthcare provider's note will say, this person may not return to work for 2 days, and then will return for a follow-up visit, or this person may return to work. So it's every single claim and issue is individualized. There is no set parameter. It just depends on the actual individuals. And so we're tracking those very closely, and that comes through HR. And myself and my team work with that person to make sure that we're following whatever the healthcare provider is offering. And again, if it says that they need to be off for, you know, a more of an extended period, we're reaching out to the healthcare provider and saying, hey, would this be possible? We've got these, you know, potential duties that this person could do. Do you agree? So we're working directly with the employee and the healthcare provider.
So your experience is, what percentage of the time do the people come back that they're unable to work with, you know, they can't work, period, versus percentage of time that they say that they can come back with a restriction, you know, not lifting weight?
An actual percentage, I would have to go back and look, but I would say that we've had maybe 1 or 2 individuals that had a shortened, extended period of time off. And I think those were some of the anomalies that we spoke about that just, you can't foresee those coming. And, but for the most part, we've been able to accommodate transitional duties for almost everyone.
Okay, so you're comfortable that the providers are giving incidental work available on their restrictions that they put forth? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And again, it's not done in a vacuum. We're doing this with not only the healthcare provider, but we're working with our employee, because we're engaged with that employee every step of the way. So we're having deep conversations with the employee. We're reaching out to Copper Point. We're making sure that they understand what is happening. We're submitting all that paperwork back. And then the full circle is, of course, is that we're working with our operations team so that they understand what's happening with each individual employee.
Okay, maybe just offline, if I could get those incident rates for the lost time and the accident ratios?
Does it, yeah, if it
Offline.
pertains, right, that would be, it pertains to our financial exposure, so maybe share it with all of us, and if that would be, might be beneficial for a wider variety, if that's possible.
Thank you.
One of the things that is occurring to me, it may come up from some of the other committee as well, there's a quarterly review of some of the high-level goals that are going on with the renewal. That was what Brian built in, right? There's a quarterly review with operations. It would be from an interest to the governing board and to the budget and finance going forward, to have some kind of an indication of how we're proceeding, right? Are we tracking toward making some of these big goals? Because again, not only are we concerned about our employees overall, but about the financial exposure. So if there's something if there's some way to build that into a very quick update for a future, for the coming from finance on a quarterly basis, it would be wonderful. Entertain it for a food for thought. You can see there are just a couple of high-level points that you're looking at quarterly. Come back to us with a quick update on, hey, how are we tracking on this? So we can celebrate that we're proceeding in the right direction. I think that's something I would consider.
So I want to make sure we understand what those quarterly reviews are doing. Those quarterly reviews are my team and the Copper Point group and Brian and his team meeting, and we're going over each individual's claim.
Oh, we can't get those. That's not my suggestion.
Exactly. So that's what our quarterly reviews are doing specifically, but
I meant, Kirsten, just to clarify my suggestion, to build off of that after you've had that, to come back to us, not with those specifics, but rather, are we on track or off track for these key metrics of renewal next year? Apologies.
Yeah, I think the information that can be shared, updated as often as you'd like, would just be loss ratio activity. So It doesn't have to be tied to individuals, of course, for privacy reasons, but just to know how your losses are tracking, because like I mentioned earlier, if they continue to track how they are, next year will be better. And then the next year, just from a premium standpoint, and this is assuming you track like you are now, we're talking a swing of roughly $150,000. So I'm talking significant dollars that could get better here. And then ultimately at that point, it goes rearward looking. So you're going to be really good for a while.
For the year after.
But the key is what we do today affects, what you're going to see 2 years from now. That's why it's important to continue on that path. So we can share that loss ratio information however you'd like. And to Mr. Is it Westell? Did I pronounce that correctly? And to your comment too, when an individual is hired to act as the safety coordinator or manager for the organization, we have individuals that are salaried employees that have a safety background with OSHA and different organizations, and they will partner up with that individual to assist. We don't charge any additional, but it can be helping out with site visits. It's going to be a lot of information flow, education. So we'll work hand in hand with that individual to make their transition as smooth as possible.
Any other questions from the committee? Are there any questions from our residents, our owners in the audience? We do have a question online. I'll read that now. From owner member Bruce Lees, 135422. Who is the person responsible for completing the OSHA 300 and reporting data to OSHA? Is that the responsibility of the safety coordinator who has been performing that duty?
So currently that falls to me. So I have been completing, and we as a team complete it as incidents occur. And then at the end of the year, we finish up the OSHA 300, and then we post the OSHA 300A.
Thank you, Kirsten. Any other questions? Then again, I love thank you for taking the recommendation that we get some kind of a periodic update on the loss ratio. We'll keep an eye on that. I think that'll be very helpful to us. And again, Brian, we thank you so much for your partnership with us. I believe that concludes. So thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So that concludes item 3.01 on workers' compensation renewal. I'm going to propose, I'm reordering the agenda slightly. We will get to 3.02, but I'm going to call 3.03 first so that we can get to the proposed fiscal year 2025-26 SIP review. The reason why I'm doing that for the committee and for anybody who's here is that our priority right now is to make sure we're meeting key dates on the budget cycle. So reviewing our capital budget, and then the next agenda item will be the operating budget questions. Those are really top of mind. So we want to ensure that we can do all of that. So while Carl comes up to the podium, just remember from a committee standpoint, our goal here is to review the SIP proposals, and our goal will be to formulate a recommendation on which of these items, if any, deserve further scrutiny from the governing board. The governing board, as part of the budgeting process, will look at the budget in total and pull out any items that require a deeper dive or debate. So when you hear us use the words pull outs, that's what we're talking about here. So continue to listen for, observe, and be prepared to formulate recommendations when necessary around which, if any, of these items require scrutiny. So again, back to Carl, who will walk us through the changes this month. Thanks, Carl.
Thank you, Director Novello. Good morning, committee. Good morning, audience. Excited to be here in November. Whew. In March, getting ready to kind of seal the deal with the capital projects portion of our budget and start going into the operational side. We don't have many changes today. This is the opportunity for the Budget and Finance to see the entire budget as it stands today proposed, and for the other committees that are coming up this week, this afternoon's charter clubs, they can always come back to this meeting and see anything that we've discussed greater than the relevant items for their committee. So moving right along, we have our monthly color blocks. Please remember that the tan areas first here are the new capital projects. We'll go through some blue areas, which are recreation areas, R&R, right out of our reserve study. And then our green color blocks are the reserve study items for golf and landscaping. And then we have an allowance category. Not much has changed. We do have a significant add in our new capital area. I'll go over that in a little bit more detail and give you an opportunity for any questions. But a quick review of our color blocks. We have a RCSCW website redesign and phone app add-on into our new capital area. This is for $300,000. I will mention that originally we had added an extra $100,000 to our allowances. I will mention that that has been deleted, so we're at a different, a lower rate, back to last year's proposed number of $420 for the allowances, and bolstered what our IT director has kind of developed into the next year working project for website redesign and phone app. That is the only change to the new area. Moving right along, in our R&R for Recreation Division, the only add-on for March is some workstations. You'll see that at the very bottom of the blue category for $25,000. These are new workstations for the HR department's working area and the marketing and PR working area. And basically they are the employees' desk areas. Our old stuff has aged out and being replaced, proposed to be replaced. There are no changes in the golf category of R&R. As I mentioned, there is a reduction in the allowance category, which is our unexpected facility improvements category. For each year, we've averaged $420,000 of approved funds previously, and we had it at $520 for the last few months of presentations for this budget, and we reduced that back to $420 due to the new project that I mentioned for website and phone app redesign. And the last conversation in this color block area is this committee has asked for a reference to deferred items. As I've mentioned in the past, each year that we start developing the budget around July, our initial list is much greater than what it gets to by the final budget. And we had basically $1,212,000 worth of deferred items. And over the last month, tennis courts windscreens for R.H. Johnson, due to the properties committee and the tennis club recommending to the governing board that they really felt like the windscreens weren't needed. So we are postponing that repair and replacement project to a future year. So that $75,000 has been moved to deferred. I mentioned last month the softball outfield electronic scoreboard is a project for FY 24-25. due to the funding from Liberty Buick, so that has been deferred. And Russ Boston in Facilities Maintenance just recognized that he did not need Palm Ridge pool circulation pumps this season for $14,135. That's it for our color block sheets. And just a little higher level description from my presentation. You will see that the capital budget currently stands at $490,000 for new capital. Repair and replacement for the recreation divisions is $2,002,377. Repair and replacement for golf and landscaping is at $2,714,776. And allowances were reduced back to $420,000 for a total of $5,627,153 for our overall proposed capital budget. Moving on to the new item that was added in our over $50,000 conversations, we have the RSCW suncitywest.com website redesign and phone app for $300,000. This redesign is a current suncitywest.com website. It adds Apple and Android phone app for the Sun City West, has dynamic content between app and website, and member portal with links to member dues, billing, tee times, event ticketing system, etc. Kyle is here today if you have any further questions on this to go into higher level detail. But those are the only proposed changes to the March proposed budget.
Thank you very much, Carl. I would love to hear a little bit more about the next steps for the proposed website redesign and phone app. It's something that we've discussed, so I'm not surprised. But yes, if Kyle is prepared to just walk us through high level, in particular, is it something that we would do in-house? Are you considering partnering outside? Tell us a little bit about what you have in mind.
Yeah, we would hire a third party to help redesign and redesign the app. Well, design the app and then redesign the website and make sure the content between the two is updated dynamically. So if you update the web page, it automatically updates the app, and that way you're not having to go to two different places to update everything. So make sure everything's in sync, and also to make sure, like we mentioned, the member portal with members' dues, tee times, everything. Make sure everything kind of flows together on the app. So a third party helped redesign some interfaces between TEI and the new Purple Pass, that type of thing. So it all kind of looks like it's the same site. So kind of developing those links. So this is the upfront cost to kind of get it all built, and then we would maintain it on our end with Rain, and the IT team would maintain it. But it's kind of the ballpark cost. We've looked around to other communities, see what they're paying. So we kind of really want to hone in the cost a little bit more, but this is kind of the initial ballpark. I mean, you can build a website for $2 million. Your nephew can build it for $50.
That was theoretical, folks. Right, theoretical. What? Just want to. No, our residents will do exactly what I just did. They heard $2 million and they passed out at
So I'm
home.
saying
So
there's
please,
a wide variety of what it could be. So that's kind of what we're owned in. It's kind of one of those things you kind of get what you pay for. So we're
Kyle,
trying to build
and
a quality website.
you come to RCSCW with a lot of experience. Where does, in your experience with other similar initiatives, where does this stand in terms of level of detail, or tell us a little bit about your familiarity with?
Yeah, I think it's pretty average. I mean, we'd have to use some of the out-of-the-box elements, but we'll need some custom programming too. And I've worked with a team before that can build us a whole custom website. Like Club Track was kind of almost customized to us, so we can having a member portion that is built custom for us if we wanted it, or more of an out-of-the-box experience, or more just kind of redirecting the TEI to the member portion there. So there's a lot of different avenues we can go there. So this is kind of the initial discussion and the kind of the initial ballpark we're trying to work off of, and then we'll go out and get some quotes and kind of hone it in a little bit closer.
It's a challenge because at this point you have not even had the opportunity to go out and receive quotes. But the objective for this $300,000, if I'm hearing you correctly, is to complete this initial redesign and that initial integration into existing systems, not rewriting anything. Correct?
It would redesign the thing and build the app too.
Right.
So
But
this would kind of
but
include
TEI
everything.
and so forth would just be links out. A portal means links out to what's already there.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm sure that there's a lot more there, but it's a challenge there's no way to understand this at any more detail in my past experience. So thanks for telling us a little bit more about what your mindset is. Once there is some further discussion, presuming there's a budget for that, the governing board approves it, the next steps would be inclusive of the design and so forth. Would the residents and the governing board be hearing from you and your team as this goes forward?
Yeah, for sure. We even talked with Steve and kind of forming a little like IT committee with different departments to make sure that how they interact with the website, that they'd be included in the process. And we can also have like, board members, committee members, that type of thing, kind of getting some process to giving us feedback to try to figure out the best way to kind of redesign this. Because I'm not an expert. I'm not going to do everything on my own. I would definitely feedback from everyone to make it as useful as possible for the entire community.
Understood. Thank you. And now I've dominated the questions. So questions from anyone else, please. Jim? Oh, Jim was first, Chris. I'm sorry. And then we'll go to you. I'm sorry.
This is my baby.
Mine too.
Yes, and I share it with you deeply. So I guess my first question is, are we going to be offshoring this? Or is this something that does the design? Or is this something that you keep here locally? I mean, are we using like Fiverr or a contractor that's offshore?
Yeah, we would use a third party to do the redesign for us, and like I said, then we maintain it ourselves as we
Right.
go. So the initial design would be third party, and then we would kind of keep it from there, and we're working with them too. Like, yeah.
Are you using somebody offshore like out on Fiverr to do it, or are you using somebody locally that pays?
Yeah, it'd be
more
like a
premium.
local, like a web company, not just not
Here.
Like just, yeah.
Here in the United States?
Yeah, yes. In the United
Okay,
States,
where
yeah,
we're
sorry.
paying premium dollar
I
for it.
wasn't sure if you meant like here, Sun City, but yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be a local, like
Yeah.
local or West Coast or somewhere like that.
All right, go ahead, Cliff. I'm sure I got that. See that in your eye. You want to chime in.
Well, I mean,
You understand what I'm poking on here.
I do, but that's Fiverr is not really something that we would enlist an outside firm to do this for us. Now they may sub it out to Fiverr or whoever, but we wouldn't be involved at that level of redesigning the website because we would want a more professional company handling that part of the project, and it's not something that we would just send out to Fiverr and say, "Hey, write this page," and then we would take that and then integrate it into something else. It just wouldn't work that way.
Well, they would do your whole system. It's just a contractor that it's offshore.
I know who it is. I've worked with them in
Okay,
the past. They're
but you
doing
do
more
pay
marketing and
you
and
pay a
things
lot
like that,
less
marketing
than what
related.
you would pay.
No, I understand how it works, but
Okay.
we wouldn't do that.
Okay, that's what I'm poking on.
Fiverr is more like a
Well,
staffing type of
well,
thing.
no, they do it.
They do everything. I
You name
understand,
it,
but
they
think
do
of
it.
in that way, right?
Basically, it's contractors
I
that are
understand who they are, yeah.
to where it's much more competitive pricing.
Yeah.
Than what you would pay somebody here down the street in Glendale or Phoenix or whatever.
Totally understand that. I just.
Yeah. I guess my other question would be is what are we benchmarking? I mean, you're asking for over $250,000, $300,000. And I guess right now it's just kind of, this is what we're thinking. Do we not have a statement of work of what this is going to look like? And at the end of the day, I'm trying to understand what the value is for the member, the user experience. I can already pay my dues. I could already get my tea times. I can already do the ticketing. I don't understand. Are we going to integrate the clubs, the activities, to where it's all I can see on what's going on today in my community for the different events and activities? Or
Yeah, we'd have like the master calendar integrated in there too. I mean, we don't have a specific set of goals now that we need. Everything's kind of open-ended. We want to kind of get as much integration in there as possible. So that's why, like I said, we're going to kind of form a informal committee to like just figure out what every kind of department, like the clubs and operations and everything, HR, golf, what do they need? What would help the members better? What would increase the productivity of using the app to get things done quicker, have
Okay.
information quicker at your fingertips as opposed to going to 10 different places now.
It would, I'm presuming, sorry, Jim, I'm taking your, but I'm presuming that the idea is to literally redesign what's currently there on our website. Because our website has this. It's hard to find.
Yeah, exactly. It's just kind of,
If that's the objective, again, Jim's, I hear what, if I hear what you're saying, it's what's the value to us as owner members? And that's a valid question. If so, like what, is it worth that $250,000?
Yeah.
And it's hard for us to know right now because this is so early on. You have no proposals. You have not, it doesn't sound like you've defined the scope yet.
Yes.
Right. So that's going to be, that's a challenge for all of us, but we're not at the point where we've received, it's not our usual capital budget request. And I think Jim is very familiar with IT budgeting and so forth, as am I. It's hard to get that level of specificity that our community is used to, right? In terms of a capital budget. Oh, we've had 3 or more bids and now we know exactly what this is going to cost. We're not at that point. So I don't know how to proceed exactly, but I hear what you're saying. We do need to put a little thought into it.
yeah, after speaking with
To say the
Cliff and
least,
Steve, and
right.
we kind of, I know it was, the timing is kind of bad because it was coming on pretty early and having to get this in now. But we
Better to
felt
have
like
the
trying to
conversation
get a
now.
ballpark in
Yeah.
there now to kind of get it in there instead of waiting a whole another year. Is kind of the thing. So
This is my biggest, I mean, literally, this is my biggest pet peeve for the community. We're so far behind. And there's so much going on in this community, but it's not really at our fingertips of, you know, the activities with the different clubs that are going on today or the what offers from the rec center. I mean, the villages.com would be a great one to look at. The Grand, other, you know, adult that live
for sure.
communities to see what they got. I have a hard time giving a nod to $300,000 for something that I kind of feel like we're going to put more lipstick on what we already have. And
Oh, no, I'm sorry to interrupt you again, but remember too, I hear what you're saying. I completely agree as a board, right, this is going to be tough. However, just remember, this is why we have this process. I can't tell you folks what to do, but I assume that we're going to pull this one out for further scrutiny by the governing board, right? So nonetheless, just know we're not approving anything at the committee level. The governing board has to. It would be difficult to ask anybody to make a recommendation based on a feeling. I understand your point.
I understand.
And we have our general manager.
So I just want to interject a little bit. So just to be clear, this is not lipstick on a pig. It is definitely not lipstick on a pig. This is definitely a redesign of the website. It's the integration of an app. It is exactly what you talked about, looking at places like the Villages and some of these other places, like what does that look like and how we can really increase the member experience so that they have better access to their information as well as just information about the community and what's going on. The point is it's the whole chicken or the egg. So we could not do this and go out and get all the bids and do all the scope and have all the details and bring the bids and say this is what we need. We're going to be a long ways off before doing that. Or we have funds set aside and then we go through that process. We may or may not spend $300,000. I don't know. What we know is that it's not cheap to redo a website to do it right. And that's the key here, is we want to make sure we do it right. So we're not doing lipstick on a pig because that's not my goal either. I don't want to just say we take the website and pretty it up and call it good. I want to really see some integration, really see some improved member experience, and definitely the member portal, really make it to where it is consistent with where we're at, what year it is basically, versus what we have now. So if that helps at all, but I just want to kind of interject and provide
Thank you.
Thank you.
And this is a process question, I think, that's either for you, Stephen, or for Cliff. From a budget standpoint, we have a little bit of a precedent in terms of pulling, if we proceed forward, we could, last year, we pulled out some, we carved out some money from our operating budget, I believe, because we did not know what was going to happen with some legislation around minimum wage. Right? So we held off on releasing funding based on some information. Would we, for something like this, I presume that if this was a concern of the governing board or this committee or what have you, that we could consider something similar in that moving forward with the project to please go forward and scope this may not give you the full amount of 300,000 to go out and go spend. I'm not sure. We might need to revisit how would we tackle something like this, assuming that we wanted to go forward, in that we don't have all of the detail. Have you given that thought at all?
Just real quick. So the contingency plan that we spoke of last year, centered around 18 an hour, was a contingency in the budget where we would forego some of the Lizard Acres project, for example.
Right, there was a
if
group
that-
of
if that-
funds that we
right.
said,
So
we
we
didn't
would-
release all of it on
Right.
July 1st.
Exactly. So, but even that still would have required a governing board action, because that item
Yes.
was in the budget. So it would have been required a governing board action to come back and say, we're pulling this out of the budget. So that's really kind of how that rolled. What I would say is, and I think Kyle touched on it, and that is that we're going to have public engagement with this. We're going to have, obviously, operational engagement, and the details of this are going to be, they're going to be given and reported on and updated throughout the process to show the value add to the community and to the committees and what that means. So this process will be fully engaged, but because of the timing, because of our policies, we do need to get something on the books, and it is kind of a little bit of a wag in terms of what something like this would cost without having it turn into lipstick on a pig, so to speak, and return a finished product that it gives us. There's other things we're looking at. We're looking at actually being able to have portal interaction to attend meetings, to post board docs. All that stuff really should be, we want to keep that with our community instead of broadcasting it out to the world, so to speak. So there's a lot of different things we're going to look at, a lot of different moving parts, and we're going to need a firm that's going to be able to do that for us, that has experience at doing that and tying it all together and to a business like ours.
Yeah, no, and that's, no, 100%. And I would just add, like, to your point, this will not be done in a vacuum. It's not like we're going to, be, okay, now we got $300,000, so let's just go do it. No, it's going to be internally, operationally would be, as we mentioned, there's going to be a little internal IT committee, so we make sure that all of the needs operationally are being met, so that it's not just the IT director going out and finding a firm, but making and putting together the scope, but also the folks internally, and then it's certainly engaging, and again, who from the community or how that looks, I don't know yet exactly, but engaging community members as well, because we want to make sure that we don't miss anything from the community side as well. There could be things that we didn't think of.
Right.
That we want to get good input on. So again, it won't be done in a vacuum, just, okay, great, we got the 300,000, let's go out and get a contract and get her done. No, it's going to be a process still. It may not even, it may be something that has to be carried over, frankly. I don't know how long, I want to do it right. We're going to spend this kind of money, we're going to do it right. So we're not going to rush into anything. So whether or not we'll even get it accomplished in this coming fiscal year, I don't know that, But I want to have the funds set aside so that if we get to that point, we can. My goal is to get it done in this fiscal year. Whether we'll meet that goal, I don't know yet.
A suggestion from me for you to consider, I think it will be easier for all of the committees and the governing board to engage if we had a little bit more definition of your intended scope. A little more, more specifics around what you just spoke to,
Sure.
both Kyle and Stephen, so that the community, the governing board, and the committees would understand, for that 300,000, this is what we expect to do. And it will not be of this nature. My experience is that this is not the final amount of money that we will spend on an initiative like this, but it's enough to get us started. But it would be very helpful to define the scope of what you're expecting to do with this 300,000 a little bit more. That's my suggestion.
Sure.
Right? It's not telling you how to do it, but it would help us all make the budgetary decisions.
Totally understood, absolutely.
I'd like to toss in one more thing. I guess my one takeaway is, it's just a suggestion, is to entertain, at least poke around the opportunity of, I hate saying it, but to offshore something like this. If there's opportunity to get more bang for the buck, if you will. Because I know firsthand doing it, something here locally wise, it's just cha-ching, 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 cha-ching. when there may be opportunity to get more bang for the buck somewhere
Yep,
else,
very good.
being virtual. Thank you.
Yep.
And thanks for the insight, Jim. Appreciate it. Anything else? Well, if more comes to mind, you let us know. Chris, you had a question as well?
Yeah, well, a lot of it was covered during this past discussion. I just wanted to let you know that I think the Budget and Finance Committee would be doing a good job if we are concerned about this. I know I spent 3 years on a 6-month project and don't even want to talk about budget that didn't turn out the way we wanted. And that wasn't the only story. It's very easy for these things to get out of hand and be very, very difficult. So the idea of adding scope to it, some targets, some expectations, and also I think the question that I'd like you to answer also is that if we're better off redesigning what we have versus replacing with something existing, because I know customization is a pain in the neck, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we could change our habits and fit something that exists better than we can customize it, because sometimes we don't even know what we want.
Yeah, I think trying to integrate it into an app, I think, is where we kind of need to start from the ground up. So we have an app and the website itself. I know it's one of the biggest requests I've gotten since I've been here is like, oh, all these other places have an app. We don't have anything like that. So I think that's a lot of impetus to redesign what we currently have and kind of trying to squeeze that into an app. That would be lipstick on a pig, I think. Yeah.
And I don't want you to misunderstand. I think all of us, I can't speak for them. I would tell you that something like this is needed.
Yeah.
It's just caution. It scares me when I see it.
That was well said. It's hard to not speak for, I would never try to speak for any of you, although sometimes it sounds that way. Any other questions on this end? David David, start first, please, and then Rick.
Sure. I don't need to reiterate what's been said, but I'm concerned in doing projects like this. We're going to find out where there are things that we need we don't have. Whether it's some of the freestanding software that you have may not even integrate or not be able to integrate, and with whatever your process will have, and eventually an app. So my concern is that the fact is not that we don't need this and that we need to move forward. My concern is how we came to that conclusion of $300,000 is set aside. I think that to me is one that's very nebulous right now. And just as Chris has said, I've done a lot of IT projects, multi-million-dollar projects, and I will tell you, I've never seen one come in on budget. And there's always unknowns that come about. And so my concern is, I don't know what the process should be. I'm just a little concerned that we're kind of pulling a fee out of the sky to put into the budget, which I understand. We have to start somewhere. But I'm not sure that I feel comfortable right now with the amount that's been set aside, so that we don't have false expectations that that's going to be the total amount we spend. And I think that is probably not going to happen. I don't think we're going to get it at 300,000, more than likely. It'd be great if you can. I mean, that would be fantastic. So my concern is I just have a lot of unknowns. Again, not reiterating that I don't think we need this.
Yeah, David, I made a lot of my career in managing folks, and so I think we're all speaking from experience, as is Kyle. So very well said, Rick.
I just have two things.
Sure.
This project should be customer focused, customer driven, and operational focused, not IT focused. Mm-hmm. Because that's where you're going to get all your benefits, is experience that the customer sees on what they do on a day-to-day basis through your website. If it's designed and implemented by IT, it's going to be the easiest way to be programmed by IT people. You need to get the business involved and make sure the operations are efficient and productive. And the same with the customer experience. So.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with it. That's why, like I said, we have to kind of form a committee with all the department heads to see how they would use it, how it would make it easier for them to use, and kind of design around that instead of just me being an IT guy saying, no, I can do it this way. So,
right.
Yeah, for sure.
I think, again, correct me if I'm wrong, fellow committee members, but what you're hearing us sounds pretty consistently say is we need more information about the scope of this, manage our expectations. And it's hard to say hard, it would be very difficult to gather agreement to just approve a check for 300,000, which is that's not what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
But I think you're seeing, or I'm hearing support to the concept. We're grappling with how do we go forward and work together if we're going to do this, fund it, and so forth. That's what I'm hearing, right? So the 300,000, where did the number come from? Or just help us understand the assumptions around it, and especially around the scope of what we would expect to do and how you'd proceed. That's what I'm hearing from the committee so far. And anything else? We have a number of resident comments that have already come in online. Anything else before we open up to, I believe that was our final update, or did you have something else? Carl, okay. Any other questions specifically from the committee for Kyle but don't go anywhere, Kyle, because you're not done. Oh, Jim has one.
It might be worthwhile to poke around on the other active adult communities and see what they get, and then contact them on who their designers were. And maybe we may not need to reinvent something. We may just take something that's already built and put our flavor of it.
Yeah, I have thought of that. My job before this was working for Blue Star Resort and Golf, which managed 20 different adult communities. And I'm been in contact with our web provider there that helped with that.
Okay.
So in my head, I've been thinking maybe, I don't know if they have IP for like what we built for our other communities, but if they can kind of use that shell too for the member portion, that type of thing. So yeah, it's been kind of in the back of my head too.
Tip of the hat.
Good idea.
So Carl, walk us through the rest of the presentation, and don't go too far.
Really,
Kyle.
the rest of this presentation is, we are always looking towards this end of the budget season, and we're in March. A recommendation from this committee to the governing board. So if you have any further questions on any other of the capital items, now is the time.
Right.
And like I mentioned, we are looking for a recommendation from this committee.
And we will not be making that recommendation today, just to level set. I'm not comfortable that we've had the opportunity to really dig into this final point. So just to set expectations, going back to our presentation or our communication together, I believe it was our first, the February, probably February 4th meeting, I presented the timelines. So this committee needs to make recommendations for capital budget pullouts no later than our April 1st meeting, so that we can funnel that recommendation to the governing board. So just so that we're all aware, my expectation is that that's the date that we're driving toward. And again, we may have some more questions on this last point. I believe we will, based on the comments we've had.
Any other questions on any of the other slides?
Any of the other projects and changes? So Jim does have a question. Jim, go right ahead. Not on IT, this is on the other.
No. Landscape, under your removal and replacement of the lawn bowl turf.
Todd is coming down.
All right.
What's the question?
Just how did we come up with that number?
I believe Todd's covered this for us a couple of times, but I hope, let's make sure that we're listening and that there isn't anything different.
So we had two different contractors come out that do this kind of work, and they met us out there, and that's how we arrived.
Enough said.
That's how we arrived at that number.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry for the long steps.
He has to get his steps in, it's all right. And I think it's important, and thank you, Jim, I didn't mean to cut you off on that. It's important to note the fact that Todd went out, as most of I believe we always follow that policy, go out and at least try to get the bids so that there's a little bit of back and forth. Any other questions? Thank you, Jim. How about from our,
I have one.
oh, Chris has one?
Hey, Carol, just a quick question. I don't think it happened. Thank you for letting us see what was deferred from our R&R. Was anything pulled forward this year? Or we would know about it if it was, right? It wouldn't be on
Some of
the
our golf
list.
carts,
It was
that was
something that we
covered
would have
early. Yeah.
approved.
Yeah, that is one standout item that is Pat O'Hara, with Golf Ops Manager, did explain the benefit of putting 10 additional carts to make it 30 from the average 20, for the benefits of timing, kind of finishing up the fleet, basically, and in concert with the expenses for the Gulf irrigation project. So it just helped.
Okay.
Yeah, Chris, the page on that one that we're referring to is, I can't see the numbers, but the title is Golf Carts for Courses, Quantity 30. The amount in the proposed budget is 212,534, and it discusses that point. Ed? Sorry, I missed you there, Ed.
On the bowling alley project, we talked about looking at trying to sell that used equipment, but we look at R&R of golf and landscape equipment, there's no mention about disposal of that. And that's such a big amount of money that we're spending. Do we have a cost of what we're disposing of?
Todd's going to help with that question.
You can't see this at home, but Todd's getting his steps in today.
So the disposal of the old equipment, there's several different things that we do. We take that equipment and we stage it in one area, and then we have all the mechanics come over and take a look at it and take parts off of it. As you know, we're all Toro equipment, so we can use those parts on other equipment. So that helps save money on repairs. We can take it down for scrap, depending on the price of scrap metal at that time. We can do that. Or we have somebody come in and they'll haul it off for us. So those are the three ways that we do our disposal of our old equipment. But you know, mechanics, they do a good job of going through that equipment and taking all kinds of stuff off, you know, whether it's engine or body parts or whatever, and take that back to the shop. And again, we can use that on the other equipment. So there's not much left once they get done with it. So it's basically scrap metal. And that's our procedure for disposal.
It's good, Todd, that you're doing that. I know you do it on a lot of things, but we don't hear it, and I think we need to brag a little bit more about it because it is such a big thing, and I would do it exactly like you're doing it, but to show those dollars that we're saving, like you say, when you defer, you know, the equipment and stuff, I think it helps to understand all the work that you're doing.
Okay. All right, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Were there other questions from the committee? So are there any questions from our owner members in the room? So we do have questions that are online as well, but we'll take the questions in the room first before we go to our at-home folks.
Nick Turner, 131829. I'm reminded that businesses tend to spend about, small businesses tend to spend about 15% of their revenues on IT, which puts our spending at about $4.5 million. I'm also reminded of when I was working in software product management, particularly around websites, order management, that kind of thing. And I'm used to companies spending 20, 30, 40, $50 million on this sort of thing. So 300,000 looks like a bargain, just off the top. But I agree that we need to look at the scope. We need to be aware of scope creep. And also we need to look at the user personas, as the software people would call them, because this isn't 26-year-old graduate with an MBA who's doing merchandising on a website. This is 60, 70, 80, 90-year-olds who are not as quick around websites as everybody else. And so we need to pay very careful attention to the usability and the age and skills of the membership. Thank you.
Excellent points. All our residents make excellent points. And I think there are a number of us who are coming from that sort of technology background. And again, the key, I would expect, Mr. Turner, that the key will be understanding what's the expectation or the scope of the 300,000, because it's not if but when we spend more money on something like this. As you mentioned, 300,000 would be a bargain if that was everything, but it's likely the first foray into moving us into the 21st century, in my opinion. So, but thank you for the comment. Are there other resident comments in the room? Then I will go to our online comments. I'll read them, and some of them may have already been covered. Frank Bagnato, 117679. Has there been any investigation into an off-the-shelf solution instead of a custom to come up with a new website and app? And again, I believe Kyle answered that question already. If you'd like to just confirm that, what I heard you say is that you would expect to go to other communities who have done something similar, including one that you came from most recently. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. Our current solution is kind of the out of the box that we customize on our own. So I think just in order to take a step forward, I think it's something that we need to have customized, and it's not something we can really find out of the box.
And the customization would be that design and usability, Kyle, or what makes it unique?
It'll be kind of the integration between all the, it would be more the integration between all the different systems to get all the information in one spot instead of having, we ultimately might have to have just links to different things that pull up within the app or whatever, the Purple Pass or the get tickets and stuff like that. But we'd like to look into getting API access and stuff like that. So it's very native, the integration. So it's more of a one experience.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you for the question. Bruce Lees, 135422, still concerned that 300,000 is quite expensive when off-the-shelf products can be tailored for our use. So you said you are just guessing at the cost, would like to see more oversight here. Mr. Lees, what you're hearing from the committee is that the committee has asked for the same. Don't have an answer on that yet, but we do need to see a bit more information, although at this stage of the game, the specifics are unlikely. A bit more specifics would be helpful. It was a bit of an estimate. WAG was the technical, but we won't spell out what that means. It's just basically it's an estimate at this point, so that we can have these discussions. If I may add as well, I appreciate the fact that the operations team came in at this point without having all the answers for us, so that we can have this discussion together about the scope and what our expectations are. But thank you, Mr. Lees, for that question. Ann Becknell, 118578. Will this new website design enhance the features for individual clubs? Example, allow people to pay their club dues and maintain the club roster. We've touched on just pieces of that. Kyle, any response yet? I know that it's still very early on, but
yeah, all the clubs had their own individual websites. That wasn't in our initial scope of what we were thinking of doing. So yeah, no, and to take payments online would be kind of tough just because of the commingle of finances. I guess it would have to go to the individual clubs, so it's kind of tough.
So at this point, it's really it's that member portal type of experience is what you're looking at.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
But not to say we couldn't do the webs, but that's
club dues and club roster, and so club
Yeah.
roster is really through Club Track, as I understand, and the dues are separate, and they need to be held separately because of the way our clubs are functioned. That concludes the online questions. We do have another resident ready to ask a question. So,
Dave Bennett, 137887. It's more of a question with the existing systems. They're older, and I didn't know with the AI coming into everything, what the impact would be if newer systems or something with AI are available.
I'm not sure what your question is. Could you want to know if there would be AI integrated into technology?
Correct. If you Google it, apps versus AI, they said that they predict that they'll be intertwined, and it will really be more efficient. There's a whole list of things that they think apps with integrated AI would be more customized and more friendly.
I think that's very much in the hands of the folks who are operating, but Kyle, if you'd like to respond about what AI could mean for us, that would be great.
Yeah, I think like search tools and that type of thing built in will be a more customized search. If you go to the app or the website and there'll be a search bar and you type something in there, I'd anticipate AI giving you a better answer as opposed to just like a algorithm indexing different parts of the website. So it's not something I've looked 100% into, but I think I see that as kind of the future to kind of get you, just go to the one page and it'll kind of find you and answer the info for you a lot better than having to kind of search for it and go to different pages to find it. So, yeah.
Thanks for that. Again, as a reminder for all of us, especially those of us on the committee, our goal is to look at the entirety of the capital improvement project, every item that's proposed. If there are items in there that over 50,000, that are those are ones we can specifically recommend. If you do have some concerns about the items that are there that are under 50,000, we can discuss those as well briefly. But our obligation as a committee is to go through the entire list. Obviously, this is a new request and it caught everybody's attention, myself included. But beyond that, the entire list is something that we are responsible for recommending items for the governing board to pull out. Otherwise, it's a recommendation on the budget as a whole, unless we pull something out for scrutiny, okay? Our timing on that, if you look forward, we have today's meeting the 4th. Our next meeting is on the 18th. And the first meeting of April is April 1st, and that's not a joke. So by our April 1st meeting, we need to be in a position to make recommendations on this item as well as the next item, the operating budget for governing board. So just keep that in mind, team. I'm going to just look for a quick, I do not believe that we are ready to make those recommendations today in total. I made that statement earlier, but I just want to look to the committee and is there anybody here who disagrees or who believes that we are positioned now to make these recommendations? I'd like to take a little more time. So if we're all in agreement, or Jim?
I'm good.
You're ready now, but anyone else agree with?
Okay.
I would like to have the committee take time to look through the entire list, but Jim believes that we're ready to make a recommendation now. And we could do that and then decide against it. It's up to the committee. I would like to wait, but we don't even know if these are the final yet.
I'm not ready to make a recommendation at this point. There's too many unknowns, especially by this IT project.
Right. And remember, we're recommending items to pull out for scrutiny. So, yep, go ahead. David?
I guess some of these things we've heard of in the past, and so we've had some time, but I think the IT one is the one that has now caused some consternation of the committee, which is rightfully so. So the question is, if we were to extract that component and spend more time on that, are we willing to go for it? Because I noticed that
No, I can just stop it there.
Yeah.
Once we complete the recommendation to pull out, we are done discussing.
Okay.
This will not come back to the committee again. That was the reason why I recommend we wait in the event that there may be something else that changes between now and the end of the month. But
So the only reason I raised that question is I saw Carl had raised the issue upon you'd asked if we could move forward. Is that anything that's going to be a problem for you moving forward? No? Okay. But that's fine, then I'm happy.
right, from a process and a bylaws and policies perspective, our obligation is to complete that task as our recommendation to the governing board, and the governing board must complete it in April. So we're still on task.
I'd like to wait.
I'm happy to share that.
There's additional information we'd like, the majority of the items I have no question at all. This new one is just new, and I think we had great conversation today. And if we get a little more detail, we feel comfortable moving forward.
Thank you. Jim, anything else you wanted to add? Because you already made the suggestion. You're ready, right?
Yeah, and I agree with you, Rick and Chris, wanting some more information. But I also agree with Stephen that let's put something out. I feel comfortable that you guys aren't going to go out and spin. You're going to take some community and operation input and be diligent with it. And we talked earlier about repeat. I say, I feel comfortable that they're going to be good, and adding some clarity in a week or two to, I feel comfortable with leaving it as is and
recommending moving forward.
recommending.
All right, that's fair. To clarify my statements too about once we make a recommendation that the capital budget items are whatever we recommend, that is and then it's off the agenda for the entirety of the working year. So I wanted to ensure that we've seen the last changes that are going to come in for the capital budget. I know that that's what is that everybody involved expects, that this is the final, but it would be great to have further input or insight to that as a Budget and Finance Committee. That's just my view. So waiting is not necessarily that I would expect to see a lot more detail on that one particular project, but just to ensure that we've seen all the detail on all the projects. Ed?
Yeah, I'm okay with delaying, I guess. I don't see a disadvantage where we lose something if we wait until the next meeting. So I like to kind of roll things over a little bit in my mind. If I'm not hurting the whole process, I'd like to take that time.
Okay. I don't believe that we'd be hurting the process by deferring or waiting for another meeting or even 2 meetings if necessary, just to level set expectations on the fact that I don't expect that we're going to see a lot of these questions on the IT project be answered. More it's, have we seen all of the changes on the entirety of the capital program is the question that I would have. The expectation is, yes, we've seen everything inclusive of this, but we're not holding up the process by waiting on that particular recommendation at this time. That's my view. If I'm correct on that, I don't believe we're holding anyone up. So we will we won't make a recommendation at this particular meeting. Oh, go ahead, David.
I have no problem with holding these. You said just holding the approval for it. I would just think in terms of efficiency, we don't keep repeating things coming forth. The other things that came forth today, are there any further questions of those? Because if there aren't, then we continue to move forward, because I think we're going to spend a lot of time in this IT component part. And I'd rather be able to get step-by-step process, because we've looked through the rest of the capital improvements. We're comfortable with those. And Carl brought forth new ones today. And if we're comfortable with those, then we keep those sort of put aside unless we come to the point where we got to make some adjustments in the budget. And then we have to go back and reprioritize. So I'd just like to, hopefully we could keep moving forward with that, with then understanding that these are fine. So Carl knows if he has to come forward with new ones, then we have to reconsider things.
Understood. That is that's my expectation in general, that at any future updates, we will hear only changes at this point. That would be any changes to the scope, to the dollars, or the components of the list. That's what Carl does each month. So, but good point. At what I'm hearing today, just to review again, the committee has no further questions on anything we've seen. Additional time to consider the new project and to think about any questions. I think that would be time well spent, but I do not expect any additional detail yet. I'll go to Rick first and then back to you, Chris. If you have any questions, you don't have to.
I think it kind of came up to us in a surprise, and that's why we're questioning all of this. The rest of the stuff we've seen this time and time again. I mean, I hate to duplicate this process over and over and over again, but I mean, we wasted a lot of time and effort and paper to see the same things over and over and over again. So I would let's just scope on getting this IT thing nailed down and go from there.
Chris?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I have my expectations correct. At our next meeting, I'm hoping to see, or maybe at any meeting where it's appropriate, I'm hoping to see the operations and IT department expand a little bit some of our expectations for redesign. Right now, the word redesign is pretty wide open. I know you don't know the details, except that, like, one question was asked today that was made common sense to our residents. Oh, does that mean we're going to be able to pay our dues, right? We should be able to say, this is what a redesign might include. This is what it won't include. That. Maybe understanding how many legacy systems will tie in, which ones would be hands off, would be helpful. And I'm not talking about minute details, just kind of an understanding instead of the word redesign.
Yeah, I think Chris would, thank you for that. When I'm using the words, we need to define the scope, that's what I meant. So that you're putting a finer point on, help us understand what what the scope is expected to be, what your assumptions are, what led into the $300,000, and all of those details are unlikely to be known right now, but at least to understand what that first foray could include in your mind would be helpful for us. Okay, I need to look at everybody now. Make sure I'm not missing anyone else. So at this point, level set expectations one more time. For this item, our job is to recommend to the governing board. It's not a decision, it's not an approval. Recommend to the governing board anything that requires further scrutiny or not, but we're not approving, just so that we understand, but recommending to the governing board for their scrutiny and future approval. Anything else on the Capitol? All right then, thank you so much, committee. I always appreciate the discussions. At our next meeting, we will have the opportunity to ask further questions, and thanks in advance to the entire team for showing us not a presentation, but only any updates next time. So we'll move on now to what's 3.04 in our agenda, the proposed operating budget and the updates only. Cliff?
Good morning. Thank you, Director Novello. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to do a quick presentation here on some of the takeaways from the initial draft of the budget, and hopefully, as one of the committee members emailed me and asked, is to kind of paint the picture and give the what's in it for me and kind of some context to some of these numbers. So I put some data together and some slides together, and I hope to be able to do that in this presentation. So taking a look at the overall budget, this budget will bring a cash inflow of $8.1 million to our reserve fund calculation, and that's through the operating budget of approximately $30.9 million, and return a $1.2 million reserve fund allocation, and then 1,100 APFs at $5,400 per APF, and that'll generate an additional $5.9 million, and then an anticipated reserve fund investment income of $981,000. So this budget again returns $8.1 million in positive cash flow to our reserve fund calculation, and then that will fund our capital projects at approximately, now it's approximately $5.6 million. And then the difference between that will go back into our reserve fund. So taking a look at the overall budget, we like to provide this visual where we have all these services, all these different categories up there. I believe there's about 9 categories up there that we provide here. And then we need a capital improvement budget, first of all, to keep the place looking nice in terms of the repair and replacement. And then we need an operating budget to maintain and staff and provide all these services. So that's what the budget really is. It's an ecosystem of all of these services that we provide, and then all the funding we need to provide them. There's a little over 620,000 hours in this operating budget, which is about 300 FTEs. And I wanted to give some context to what that means and some of the things that we're doing here and some of the check-ins and interactions we're having with our customers and our members and non-members. So with that, first of all, I put this slide together. One of the requests I had from the last meeting was, how do we compare in terms of our salaries and what we pay compared to the outside world. And we belong to an organization called Employers Council, and they use a organization called Pay Factors, which has regional and national pay information for positions. And we took our 93 positions that we have, unique positions, and align those with positions in Pay Factors salary surveys, and put together kind of a cost center analysis of how we rate in terms of payroll compared to, we first started, of course, in Arizona, and we were able to capture about 60% of our positions in specific like positions here in Arizona in that survey. And then we went regionally after that, meaning Arizona, Utah, Colorado, and looked if we needed a bigger scope to look at other positions, like positions. And basically what that did is it gave us an analysis of how we sit in terms of how we pay our people versus how other organizations pay their people. And with that, we measured that against the average. So we took the average rate for these positions and these cost centers and compared our pay in those positions to that, and we ended up at 88% of the average. So we're about 12% below average in terms of pay for these different types of, I'll call them cost centers or departments that we have here. And you can see which ones. It won't surprise you that golf maintenance and just maintenance, facilities maintenance, really, those are the most competitive jobs we have. So we have to be on the market when it comes to that. But when I say on the market, again, we're measuring ourselves to the average. We're not measuring ourselves to the bell curve on one end or the other. So these are actual wages compared to the survey analysis, compared to the average survey analysis. So when we look at the component of the budget of wages and benefits has a $894,000 increase year over year. And one of the questions I had was, can you give us the impact of these different bullet points, the actual impact of the salaries or the expense increase in each one of these categories? So I put those together. I added one bullet point, and it gets a little confusing, but July through December, we have the impact of the wage increase that we instated this year impacting versus the forecast. So, for example, in July through December of this year, we didn't have the 2025 wage increase in 2024. So that has an impact on the budget for the following year because it goes into place when you're comparing it to the forecast. It gets a little tricky, but just keep in mind, just trust that there is an impact in there year over year because of the increase that was put in this fiscal year, and it only had a 6-month impact in this fiscal year. Just like the increase we're putting in for next year only has a 6-month impact in the budget for next year. And then, so that's approximately $141,000. The up to 4% merit increase that we're putting in, we call it a merit increase, but really we address cost of living in there. We also address the ability to reward employees that shine and go beyond just doing their job. So we're able to do that with this 4%. So the wage increase is up to 4%. We have a process for evaluating that and distributing that to employees. What it also does is it helps us to address inconsistencies with what we pay versus what the average is or what we need to do to fill a position. And a lot of those get addressed when we have turnover, unfortunately, because we have to go to market for those positions. And a lot of times, the more high-skilled those positions are, the more we have to readjust. But again, to keep those employees, so we don't have to do that, we have to make sure that we're on the market for those positions as much as possible. So this helps us do that. And keep in mind, any savings in wages and benefits goes right to the reserve fund. And you could look over past year's budget to actual, and you'll see that wherever there's savings, it all goes back into the reserve fund. But that 4% will help us do that. The impact of that is $278,000 in this budget. There's the minimum wage increase impact. It's budgeted at 50 cents an hour. That's just for minimum wage employees. That's a $36,000 impact to the budget for 6 months, for the last 6 months of the year. So again, that does create compression above it, and then again, we're addressing compression with that up to 4% increase in the 275 to help adjust those wages if we need to in our review of our positions and our grades as we go into the next calendar year, and we're looking at that. And then this number was on before, but 225,000 attributable to those FTEs, and then the workers' comp insurance presentation we had earlier gave a lot of context to this, but 50,000 attributable increase attributable to our workers' comp insurance increase, and then again health insurance 8% overall. So that gives some context to that 894,000 and where the money is being allocated in the payroll budget. I had some questions about the collections person that we is creating an additional FTE, and essentially the decision to go forward with this was that we had to take our collections in-house. So previously, when a customer or a member became delinquent, or for whatever reason, a lot of them are just tied to deaths and things like that, things that happen naturally throughout the timeline of people living here, and there's things in probate and things like that, and they get old. We don't get to collect on those. So right away in our normal process, there's a process that we go through to do that. And we are a homeowners association, so we have the ability to place a lien on a house when there's a membership assessment that's due that's not paid. So we moved that timeline up to 60 days, where in the past we didn't send a pre-lien letter until after 60 days. We're now sending those before 60 days and leaning at 60 days. So that's a process change alone that is creating a bunch of additional work. I will say, because we had the big stick of the attorney working our collections on a pro bono basis, we had, I'll say, less contact with people, meaning phone calls and letters and such to members who were delinquent, because once it got turned over to the attorney, they took care of all of that. And again, it was done on a pro bono basis. Now we cannot do that in terms of turning it over to collections over to an attorney, because those fees now have to get a personal judgment to be able to get those back. You can't just lien the house for those. So that's a process change that we had to account for as well. So because of the additional work that we're going to have to do anyway in the first 60 days, we are placing more liens now because we're leaning at 60 days, not 90 days. And then the fact that if we turn it over to a collection agency, they're going to collect 20 to 50% of that debt, depending on how old it is. We decided to take it in-house. The biggest benefit of taking it in-house is that we keep control of the collections process too. And we can provide a better customer experience. It's going to be cheaper for them in the long run if there is a situation like a probate situation or wires get crossed and we're not turning it over to an attorney where they're collecting giant fees because they're churning the attorney clock, so the meter. So anyway, we're keeping that in-house. We have more control over it as well, and we'll provide a better customer experience for our customers that way as well. So ultimately, the collection agency fees would probably cost us about $120,000 a year, and we're collecting $39,000 a month now on delinquent or late dues. People haven't paid delinquent dues. So if we turn that over to collection agency, which we wouldn't do because that's kind of low-hanging fruit when it first starts. So we want to be able to do that in-house, but we weren't doing that in-house previously because we were turning it over on a pro bono basis to an attorney. So the additional work that's created automatically requires additional labor. So we can do it more efficiently in-house with an in-house person. HR coordinator. So I stood up here and I said, boy, we could just do HR better if we had one more person. That kind of shined a negative light on our HR department. I didn't want to do that. Our HR department now works miracles with the resources that they have. They really do. The point I wanted to get across is that just like pulling in an HR safety coordinator to a full-time position, there's things that you can do proactively when you're running a business. And things like safety and human resources are one of those things that the more you can do proactively and not reactively, the more services that you can provide and show the value of what we do here, the better it is in the long run, and the happier and better work environment you have. And if you take what we have per 100 employees, we have 0.67 people with our 3-person HR staff. Industry average is 1.7, according to SHRM, which is the Society for Human Resource Management. But even if you go to like an Indeed.com, they're saying it's 1.4 HR staff per 100 employees. That would mean that if we use that ratio, we'd need 6.3. We need double what we have. We're not asking for double. We're asking for one additional person, and we feel that will provide the return on that will provide better engaged employees. We'll have better trained employees. We'll have a safer work environment, and we'll be able to reduce our employee turnover, which is extremely expensive, and the return on that will be just well worth it. So I wanted to give some more context around the HR coordinator as well. Okay, so I think, we just kind of get caught up in what we do around here, and we do a lot, and we talk about 620,000 hours, and we talk about 2 million interactions with, throughout the year, but we say that, we give that information out at different, like, mid-year meetings and annual meetings, but we don't really tie it to the budget. So what I want to do is tie some of that data to this budget with these slides. So here's our org chart for the rec division, which really, we split golf into ops and maintenance. So if you split golf into ops and maintenance, recreation is really our biggest division. And so with the recreation comes, obviously all the rec centers, but we've got our clubs and events, and we've got our library in there, as well as landscape maintenance. So what are we doing with all these people, these 166 people? What's going on? Well, I was able to pull some data. I've got a great resource in my department. His name's Dave Gebauer. He's our financial analyst, and he works in Power BI, and he pulls all this data from all these different software systems that we use. He pulls it all together and is able to kind of create some great stuff. But so I asked him to do this. So he put together. Now, keep in mind, these are non-club activities. So these are just regular member activities that happen. There's over 500,000 activity check-ins, not related to clubs at our facilities. And I had asked him to categorize them, so he did. And so we have, fitness activities, pool activities, library, and these are just our members. These aren't guests. This is just members, and it's non-club related. So 500,000 check-ins at all these different facilities doing all these different activities. And when if you add in club and non-members, pool outpaces fitness by about almost 100,000 if you add those other demographics in here. But because I was surprised to see fitness so large, but so much larger than pool, but it's because our members are using our fitness centers. And there's a lot of other activity clubs and member guest related activities at the pool. But that's a breakdown of what types of activities are happening at all these different facilities. And, it takes a lot of manpower to keep these facilities in good shape, to keep monitors in place to make sure that we're, you know, our buildings are safe and our members are only using them, and a lot of setups and teardowns and things like that. So there's a lot being done, and this is why. So when you look at distinct members, we have approximately 22,000 of our approximately 28,000 members are using our rec centers. Okay, so I added in here clubs from Club Track because a lot of the data that we collect in terms of check-ins from our members is done in Club Track and not done in TEI or in TEI. So I added that in there. Now you could take those 10,000 members that are in clubs, 10,382 members that are in clubs, and you can distribute that over all these rec centers in your brain. But I didn't have that data to be able to do that, but I at least wanted to show how many distinct members are in clubs. And there's 10,382 members in clubs. And then so when you take all of these different facilities and golf included and wrap that all up into one distinct member experience, there's approximately 22,000 members checking in at our facilities. You'll note that the sports pavilion is not on here, and that's because sports pavilion uses Brunswick, and there's no integration with Brunswick at the time. But this kind of highlights, you know, what we talked about earlier with the upgrade in the system. We're never going to find a management system that has a bowling package on it. It'll never exist. So, you know, but we've got financial analysts and data people that can kind of tie all this information together as long as we have, you know, a cross-reference that we can tie it to. And we'll get there with the sports pavilion. We're working on it right now, actually. Okay, so scheduling and events. This kind of blew my mind. I had no idea, honestly, that the number was this big. And so when we started putting this data together in our scheduling system, these are events and scheduling. So whenever anything gets done, any meeting, any additional, this doesn't include like room reservations for clubs that have dedicated space. So these are meetings and things like that we have to set up and tear down. For example, all of the golf clubs use Kuntz. They use the Kuntz card rooms for all their meetings. Most all the golf clubs do that. So all the golf clubs and golf groups use Kuntz for their annual meetings and semi-annual meetings. That's why that number is so large at Kuntz. But the scheduling department is scheduling all of these different events in all these different areas throughout the year. And this does include special events as well. But this kind of blew my mind that we had 6,452 events booked last year at all of our different facilities. And again, this is to highlight what's being done. So a lot of these are literally changing the room from a dance to a dinner, or from a meeting to some type of special event, concert or whatever. So there's a lot of work behind all these different schedulings and bookings, but our scheduling and events department is very busy as well. So going into our golf ops division, 149 positions, 49 FTEs. In addition to the salary information that you requested, you also requested to try and give you some reference on how we rate when it comes to FTEs in golf. So we can do that in a couple different ways. On the operations side, well, I'll get into that. But before I get into that, we've got 320,000 rounds in this budget. You can see what the golf total rounds have been in 23, 24, and budgeted 25. And then I wanted to give you the member versus non-member portion of those numbers as well. Member golf makes up about 81% in terms of total rounds. And so you can see, kind of what that looks like and what's been happening over the last 3 years, and then what we have in the budget. And then I'll encourage you to go to or watch the golf committee budget meeting coming up next week, next Thursday, I've got some really detailed information that ties back into these member rounds and different things like that. You'll be able to see what we'll get on average per round for a Kachina card holder versus just a regular resident, all that. That's going to all be presented next Thursday, so I encourage you to watch that to give you even more details. But overall, in this budget, 320,000 rounds, and historically what we've done there, and member versus non-member. So when we look at our golf operations department, golf operations, it's not an exact science, because there's different golf courses provide different things. Like, for example, we have a small clubhouse that has a snack shop and a couple of racks with some shirts and shoes up. But you could go to a golf club that has a massive banquet hall with a huge restaurant and a huge pro shop. Okay, so they're all a little different. So it's hard in terms of industry average, it's kind of hard to get that dialed in. However, I asked Pat to reach out to these three communities, the Grand, Sun City, and Pebblebrook, and without getting specifically what each one of those facilities have, I will say the average that were at those communities was 10.3 FTEs per golf course in terms of golf operations. So
Excuse me, I'm very sorry. Is there any way to hold the, thank you. The questions can go into the front hall. Thank you so much. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No
Please
worries.
continue.
Okay. So we polled these three communities, and he reached out directly to the directors of golf at those different communities, and they still do provide different things. Some have, again, larger pro shops. Some don't have snack bars. Some have restaurants. Some use outside services and volunteers. But when you take the actual FTEs that they have versus ours, we on average fall below. So I will say there was one community of those three that had a little bit less than us, but the other two were very consistent on what they had. Actually, they were exact. And so overall, at an average of 10.3, we're at 7. We feel comfortable that we're providing that. And again, we have, for those 148 positions and 49 FTEs, we have 7 golf courses that essentially are open from November through May, 7 days a week, 12 to 14 hours. And we do close 2 in the summer. And then we do close for aeration and overseeding in the fall, and a couple, like 4 days in the spring for each course. But for the most part, that's what we're servicing with those 148 positions and 49 FTEs. And we feel very good about our FTE count per golf course. And then I wanted to give some information on the green team position. There was some discussion about that and how we were able to satisfy that position with a volunteer in the past. And I will say the volunteer was actually an employee, so they did spend some of their free time working on the green team, but it wasn't a full-time volunteer in terms of that green team person. But we really sat down and looked at this, and Pat did, and he said, this position we really need to bring this in-house. And here's why. And it's not that we can't use volunteers to help with the green team things that we do, but this has a massive impact for us, because this is an outreach to our community where we can grow our golfers within our community, and especially if they live here year-round, has a massive financial impact for us. And so this person is coordinating, on average about introducing 290 golfers in our community to golf. And if you remember back on the facility usage individual facility distinct members, we only have about 7,500 distinct members who check in at our golf courses of approximately 28,000 people. So there's a resource there that we have that we can tap into, and we have we know where these people live. I mean, we know who they are, right? So, this is one area that I know Pat and Stephen Erno has asked Pat that we're going to focus on our members, and because we've got a great opportunity there, and our Green Team program is a way to do that. So we have 290 on average enter the program. Last year we had 37 people graduate. Of those 37 people, we kind of tracked how they golfed and what their golf habits were after graduating. I know that I have one person in my department who lives in the community, and she moved to the community, never golfed before, and her and her husband are golfing twice a week now. And they went through the Green Team program. But we tracked 18 became avid golfers, meaning they played 42 rounds per year. 10 became casual golfers and golfed about it on average once a month. And so if you take our average golf revenue, so this is where the accountants and the finance people get involved. We take that, oh boy, so that's $3,750 on average when you take our $12 million in golf revenue, and man, those we're going to generate another $33,000 a year. And if we look at it over 5 years and we get the same results over 5 years, it's approximately $500,000 in additional revenue over 5 years. So, we feel like the FTE, or half an FTE, it's actually like a 0.6 FTE that we're adding here, has a lot of value, and especially with what we want to do with that Green Team program. And we feel like the return on that is significant. All right, so golf maintenance division. So we got to maintain the courses. Now, there is some national data and some local, state data here that I'm going to show you in terms of how we manage our golf courses and the amount of FTEs that we have. So we have 87 total FTEs to manage our 7 golf courses. That includes Todd and his assistant superintendent, Dan, who have both been here for over 30 years, by the way. It's crazy. So when we look at that, if we compare ourselves to the USGA, so we have about 12 FTEs per golf course, not including Todd and Dan, okay? We have about 12 FTEs per golf course. If you compare that to the USGA says, so we rank about mid-low in terms of our golf staff for our courses, for our 7 courses, at 12 per golf course. And that's according to the USGA data. There's another data resource we have, and that's the Cactus and Pine chapter, the Arizona chapter of Cactus and Pine. And according to them, we are below their low for Arizona, which is 14. So also keep in mind, this is what we budget for. We're constantly trying to fill those positions. It's a high turnover position because it's hard work. I mean, in this Arizona heat. So there's a lot of work. I always talk about when it comes to the FTEs in golf, I'm always asked, well, do we still need those people? Well, yeah, because there's need and there's get by, this is what we need to provide the conditions that we're basically mandated to do in a budget. We can get by with less. We can supplement and outsource stuff when we're low on FTEs, or when we have positions that are open. But we budget what we need for sure, and we don't budget anymore. And again, at 87 and versus, I mean, he was at 110, I think, back in 2018. So we're significantly lower than what we were, and Todd does do a lot with the resources that he has, but that's how we rate compared to USGA and Cactus and Pine. And finally, one of the questions we got was, what's the return on the irrigation projects that are upcoming and that we're currently doing? So I asked Todd put this slide together, and in terms of water savings, there's 32 acre feet and to give some context to that, that's 10.4 million gallons of water we're saving, not pumping out of the ground to water our golf courses. And there's an electrical savings there. So there's a 41% kilowatt hour decrease when it comes to our pumps that are pumping it out of the ground and our pumps that are transferring it or distributing it. So in terms of a dollar amount, Todd and I talked about this, and we really don't, I mean, we can say what that 40, we could say what the equivalent of that kilowatt hour usage is, but we really don't have a big enough time window to really say, because it's hotter in some years, it's cooler in others, and we've had 2 back-to-back just massively hot years. So we really like to get a window of time to give the actual electrical savings. But at a 10.4 million gallons of water savings and a 41% decrease in kilowatt hour usage, over time, and then you multiply that times every golf course that we do, there's really some significant savings, and we're going to keep we'll keep reporting, and once he gets solid numbers, he'll be able to report that as we get through the project. But significant savings, and then in terms of labor and just in-house, cost savings when it comes to sprinkler heads and things like that. Every irrigation project that we do, we get a 10-year warranty on all of our equipment. So, and then we're able to repurpose the good equipment that we're replacing. Back to Mr. Westall, and what are we doing with this, all this stuff, we need to talk about that. Well, we're repurposing all of those heads because we keep those standard at our golf courses as well, and that creates operational savings for us, and you'll see that in the sprinkler cost. You can see that sprinkler cost going down over the last few years for the sprinkler heads, but there's a 70% decrease in just irrigation in operational savings in our irrigation repair account, and then labor savings of those irrigation workers can be repurposed, because a lot of times they're filling gaps for that are open positions, but it does create, they're working on those sprinkler heads 47% less. So now we are using that labor, repurposing that labor right now, but it does create a savings in that irrigation labor savings of $24,500, and then cost of $12,800 on equipment. And so finally, with the changes that we talked about earlier, and the $300,000 is in this modeling for IT. So the proposed capital budget has been adjusted here. It's the only change in the modeling from the last presentation. But you can see that, we're right in line with our FFB percent, and we talked about it earlier, that 8.2 million in cash inflow, and then the proposed SIP at 5.6 million. We anticipate our reserve fund to be at 30,420,000 at the end of the year, 25-26 budget, and a 45% FFB. Key dates listed here. Encourage you to listen to the Sports Pavilion and the Golf Committee presentations. There'll be some additional details about those different divisions in those meetings, and very useful information. And that concludes my update.
So
first
of all, before we turn it over to questions, we all have to thank you for taking 2 weeks ago, we gave you a bunch of questions. Thank you for responding to those. Really appreciate that that partnership and full transparency with us. So first of all, thank you for that. I know I will be at both the Sports Pavilion and the Golf Committee presentations next week. I'll be joined by some of the members of the committee as well, as their time allows. So just so that we're all aware, March 12th, Sports Pavilion, all committees meet here. Sports Pavilion is at 9 a.m., as I recall, on the 12th, and 1:30 in the afternoon for the golf. I'm expecting, Cliff, that the team is going to go into more detail on some of how we're organized and how those operations, as well as the fees. Am I correct? Or I think the additional detail you gave us today is very helpful first of all. But will there be more there, or will it really be diving more deeply into fee structure?
So it will be fee structure, but it'll be mostly top line additional information. So revenue driven. How do we assess what we have? How do we distribute that in the budget? How do we work together on that? And then as far as the labor, I mean, you've seen all of the data on the labor that we have, and that'll be presented as well there. And then there'll be some additional slides with their updated for their cost savings increase year over year, or expenses year over year in there. But as far as the labor component, for the most part, you've been presented all that information.
Thank you. So one question that I had that may help others as well before I turn it over to the rest of the committee. It is very confusing to understand some of the timing involved here. So going all the way back to wages and benefits, please help me and all of us understand. I have heard conflicting pieces of information in terms of not only timing, but what's included in what.
Okay.
So we have a line item for merit wage increase, which sounds to me to be all wage increases.
Correct.
Am I correct? So what's the timing, if you will? Tell us, if you could, how many times a year does an employee receive consideration for a wage increase, and what time of year is that?
So we have a review process that
Right.
happens, and it's a review that starts in September. So our evaluation period is through August 31st. And then that helps us determine what portion of whatever percent we allocate to merit wage increases an individual will receive. And that's done in that is done in November and December, that evaluation process, and then the meetings happen with our employees, and then the increases go into effect January 1st. And then obviously the minimum wage goes into effect January 1st as well, which is state mandated. But that's the timing of that. And that's about 99% of all of the increases that we do. Now, we do make assessments, and things happen throughout the year sometimes just based on different positions and those sort of things that happen operationally. But we look at that as being within the budget, and we take care of those at that time.
So for the majority of our employees, just so that we understand, and there, of course, operationally, there may be some differences as people are either considered for promotion. That's up to you guys. But the general process is reviews are conducted at the end of the calendar year and go into effect January 1.
Correct.
Right. So that helps me. And also the what's called merit wage, that's a bit of in my opinion, it's hard to, it's not just merit, it's also all wage increases. It's
right.
one bucket, correct?
Correct.
The minimum wage increases are, again, it's all included in one bucket, or do we have a separate line item? Remind me, please. I can't remember.
It's all in one bucket.
It's one bucket.
The impact of the minimum wage for those 6 months is $36,000.
Right. And again, all wages changes occur with the calendar year.
Correct.
Yeah. Always fun to keep all this. So thank you for the reminder. I'm going to hold any other questions I have and turn it over to the team. Start with Rick. And there's no compulsion to ask questions. We're at 2 hours and 15 minutes of our meeting. But if you have questions.
When you did your wage survey, did that include the benefits or just strictly?
That was just for wages.
Okay. The other question I had is that we're looking at, wage increases. But also, I remember last time you said 250 not FTEs, but employees are Sun City residents.
Yes.
So what you're actually doing is you're paying them to support the community. Not only you're increasing their wages so they can live the lifestyle that they like to live here. So you're really supporting the community both ways, correct?
Yeah, I think you could look at it that way. I think
Okay.
I would.
Because if you get rid of those people, those are the people that you're probably paying a little bit less because they like living here and they like the ability to work close to home, and it's extra, extra income for them. So,
Yes, and I would hate to have to go outside the community to fill all those positions
right.
because honestly, I don't know that we could.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of positions we have at minimum wage that aren't minimum wage outside of this community.
So I just think it's a good thing. It's a PR quest for the people that live here and the community, so that they keep your employees local. So.
Thanks, Rick. David?
No, just a comment to thank Cliff for doing this. It takes a lot of time in those hours spent when you could have been doing something else, and you prioritize it for us. I hope that the members of the community see these numbers, because I think there's a lot of misinformation that is out
Yes.
there, and they should be able to be available so they can understand it, so they can answer questions that does come about during, different variety of social media and other places. So, but thanks for the work.
Yeah, everything that we're seeing and everything that the committee is reviewing is available online on board docs and readily available to every owner member. So please pass the word. Chris, any questions or comments?
Sure, I have one clarification. I believe your collections clerk, your slide is basically saying that the savings from paying a collection agency will pay for that additional.
Absolutely, more double.
More, okay, great. And therefore, the expense of the collection agency that we currently have, you reflected that in the new budget proposal, that we
Yes.
won't have that expense.
Well, yeah, and we added that person this year. It's just a year-over-year
Okay.
change. And when we presented the changes in the Arizona ARS, we presented to the board that we were going to hire a collections clerk to now have to do this work because it was additional work. And it fell within our operating budget as well, so of course.
And another question I have is, it's a little more general. We're reacting and we're jumping on that water, the mandate for the water conservation project. Is there a deadline or requirement? I feel like we're taking the high road and saying, we're going to have to do it, let's do it. Where other golf courses or such, might be waiting to extend that deadline, and hit that brick wall. Is that true?
Yeah, so I think this is public knowledge, but for example, Sun City they've received an exemption because they are nowhere near where they need to be from the state of Arizona. But the fines and penalties are massive if you're not on it. But I'll let Todd speak to the timing.
I'd like to think that we're ahead of the game when it comes to water conservation. And, we're in the 5th management plan right now, which started at the first of the year. And so that reduced our allotments. The real question, are they going to have another management plan that comes out, roll out a 2026 management plan? I'm not sure. But I'm comfortable with what we're doing and where we're at right now as far as the turf conversion, the irrigation systems, and some of the things that we're doing to conserve water, the shoreline projects and all that. So I think we're ahead of the game. And so if they do have another management plan that comes out in a couple of years, I think we're going to be in good shape. We're doing Echo Mesa this summer, and then we go over to Stardust in 27. And then in 2029, we're over at Pebblebrook, and we're going to do the same process, and it's all going to save water. So I think whatever the state throws at us as far as reduction in allotments, I think we're going to be ready for it.
And again, the impression I get is that we're kind of taking a high road. We're doing what needs to be done. We're doing it now. We're doing it correctly. And the payoff is not going to be, not only in water conservation and energy conservation, but we're not going to play that game that other golf courses are going to have to play, hitting the deadline.
Absolutely. And being within those margins, which we already are, and creating that water savings could be a potential for something down the road in terms of we still have our water rights. And, you talk about what are some opportunities. Well, that could be what it's way ahead of it's way too soon to say what the impact of that would be, but there could be a potential down the line with those water rights to be able to lease those, and that would generate some really good positive for this community down the road, assuming that everything goes on schedule and they don't, we have to make sure we fall within everything. But then, yeah, that 32 acre, that's 10.4 million gallons of water. There's a lot of people that want that.
Mm-hmm. Great consideration for the future. Thanks. Anything else, Chris? Jim?
On the payroll comparisons, so it doesn't include, it was just wage only, it didn't include healthcare benefits?
Yeah, there's a line called out for healthcare there. So health insurance is.
When you were doing the wage comparison?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that wasn't total compensation, it was just wage comparison.
Gotcha. And so seeing that, we're a little behind in regards to that's a national survey?
So about 70% of those positions were actually Arizona.
Okay.
About 30%, we had to go outside of Arizona to get a sample size that we could.
Can you kind of give me a little more color of what we're being compared against? Are they all active adult living communities?
No.
Nonprofit?
Across industries.
Okay.
Across industries.
Okay. All right. And then just on your personal, how do we bat with offering the healthcare package that we do? We pay 85% of the bill?
It depends on which plan. We pay 80 and 75.
Okay.
Depending on which plan you're on.
Okay.
And I will say, when it comes to our benefits, I think our benefits are very good, especially when you compare us to like businesses in the surrounding area. So other HOAs, we have very good benefits, and that helps keep our employees as well as attract other employees.
Okay. Yeah,
So,
it's just wanted to put some color on that because it's the
part
salary
of it.
is a little misleading, but when you put it all together, we're batting with the big boys.
Yes.
Okay.
And we are a nonprofit, so
Yes.
we're automatically a little bit less just because of the nature of
Just
what we do.
agree.
Yes, absolutely.
In regards to the class, so it sounds like we already have hired that person. That person's already rolling.
The collections person?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So my questions are useless on that. Just out of
I
curiosity.
wouldn't say useless.
Yeah. Well, I was
Well,
gonna.
hopefully I validated the reason.
Oh yeah.
for it.
I guess my
Okay,
one
very good.
question was, why wasn't that role put on the CC&R department? Why didn't they absorb it?
They're working on compliance, things like that. It's not really, it's more of a accounting / membership role.
Okay. All right. And
And they would have been reporting to the collection. They don't have time to do that. I still would have had to hire someone to do it.
in regards to the golf rounds, just kind of curious, are we running on 8 cylinders in that regard? Total rounds? Are we getting the full utilization?
Yes, so, oh gosh.
Is that, you understand what I'm trying to
Yeah,
poke
so
on?
our utilization rate, we just presented that. If you go back to the golf course, the golf meeting from February, we presented our utilization rates. And so according to Pat, we are, but so if you look at 320,000 rounds over 7 golf courses, what is that, 50,000, 40 to 50,000 per golf course for Arizona. We're very busy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I lost my place in my notes. I guess, yeah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yep, thank you.
Ed, any questions or comments?
Yeah, Cliff, I'm looking at our total benefits to salaried ratio. And I know we're like 4% better than average on our health insurance benefit. There's got to be a wall where, we get 25% health insurance increase, somehow we're gonna have to start looking at that. You think we're in a good place that if something happened, we could react, you know, like a lot of other organizations are doing with their, you know, benefits, you know, no more pensions, you know, and that,
Yeah.
I know we don't have pensions, but just.
Yeah. So I would say in terms of health insurance, last year, we actually restructured a little bit to help drive some behaviors, to drive people, some of our employees, to a lower cost premium outlet, and we did that by decreasing the percentage. That's why I said 75 to 80%, because there was a plan, it was a higher end plan that we decided that we because of the increases that we've experienced over the last few years, that we weren't going to continue to absorb 80% of the premium on that. And we had a lot of people on that program, and we reduced that to 75%, so the employee had to contribute 25%. But we did it in a way, we were able to do it because of the plan change that we made and being in the Banner network, that when we went to Aetna Banner, which is the program we're on now, most of the people that were on that program, all of their healthcare providers were in Banner anyway. So we increased the premium for that plan, moved everybody to the lower tier plan, and they were able to keep all their doctors and keep everything. And we did that by increasing the premium for that specific plan. So yeah, we do look at that, and then whenever there's an increase, it gets distributed equally from the association to the employee. So if there's an 8% increase, the association's getting an 8% increase, but the employee's also getting an 8% increase. Welcome.
Before we turn it over to our, anything else, Ed? I'm sorry. Okay. Rick seems to have a follow-up.
Yeah, Cliff, as I ride around in my golf cart, I've noticed lately, at least the last 6 to 8 weeks, there appears to be a lot more homes for sale this year than I've ever seen in the past. And have we worked with the realtors or anything to get some feel of what's happening within the community? I mean, are we going through a generation change or those type of things? Because it does have an impact on the budget. But, I mean, I see more houses on the golf course for sale now than I had in the last 4 years. So.
Yeah, Riley might have a perspective on that. He's not here right now, but I don't know that there's more homes getting turned over. I think it's kind of, from what we've seen, it's been kind of the same process. That's just a supply-demand issue, and there's less demand. And so right now, so you're seeing more signs because homes are staying up longer than they have over the last probably 3 years. Jim, you're in the real estate business. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's a national thing. I mean, the higher rates have just kind of frozen the market as a whole, and so the folks that are sitting on the market a lot longer than they were. Things aren't selling within hours. It's more measured in weeks. It's back to normal.
We're still doing 80 to 100 APFs a month, which is kind of normal over, if you look at the window of time, go back 10 years, it's kind of normal.
Yeah. It's generational change too. I think historically we've seen a lot more in the way of real estate purchases, and I look to the professionals to either confirm or deny, but historically in communities like ours, folks would retire and pay cash, right, for properties. And most folks nowadays, as generations change, they're working into their 70s and 80s and will not fully retire. And they're taking out, they're financing their homes. So that takes a little longer to turn over as well. Just, we've seen some of that economically. Any other, before we turn it over again to resident questions, if you have any, you can start lining up. We have a few online. And do you want to go back?
Can I have one more follow-up?
Of course.
Thank you. One follow-up. I guess I'm really concerned about our trend with I had done my studies earlier, and it was kind of, it seems like pre-COVID, we held pretty firm with our APFs, and it was steady Eddie. And it seems like after COVID and looking at your modeling, we've got a baked in APF increase every year. We're a community of finite resources, and I'm just deeply concerned that we just have this as a practice versus I don't know, as an assumption that we're this is the way we're rolling forward. We're going to continue to keep going to the well, and versus trying to hold the fort down and go to the well because we need to, rather than assume that we're planning for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that APF fees have become more and more important the more our facilities age. And, you know, the fully funded balance, as you can see on the modeling, is $60 million a year. That's after spending $6 to $10 million, or maybe $4 to $10 million a year on repair and replacement. So that just goes to show what a beast that reserve study is. And as it ages, the more need there is for immediate cash, and the cash has to come from somewhere. We're fortunate in that we can only take 8% of our dues and apply that to our reserve fund, because, you know, I wouldn't say the national average is 15 to 30% of your dues goes into a reserve fund. So if we don't want to fund that reserve fund with dues, we have the ability to fund it with APFs, and then as the buy-in to the community, which you get for that 5,000 to 6,000 or whatever it ends up being in 20 years, is well worth it. And I think if you polled everybody that moved into the community, and I think most of them say it was well worth it. In fact, they all would, unless they inherited their home, and they're not even paying it now if they inherit it. So it helps keep dues down for the members who have lived here. And there's a cost to that, and we'll stay on the market. So obviously we got to be careful. There's some sensitivity there, but we'll always assess that. But we are going to model out an increase there, and that may be years where we don't do anything. That may be years that we go 400 instead of 200. That might happen. But if we model that out, we should be modeling an increase there. That's why we do that.
And remember too, reminder for all of us, the resources, our reserve fund inflows come from APFs. They come from that portion of dues when it's there, and from interest income. And that's, you know, big consideration in that's why we're looking at those investment policy changes.
Yes, absolutely. The investment income is the third leg of the cash inflow stool, which is the most I would say sensitive in terms of the market. We have no control over that pretty much. So we don't want to rely on that too much. But if we do have favorable years and you know, the inflows are great, you know, we look at the overall picture and balance that out, do maybe a rebalance and go from there. But yeah, we should model out an increase there because and the other thing is that those APFs are subjected to Arizona statute changes. We saw a big one with the you know, homes being turned over for no consideration to family members and such, and trusts, and we don't get to collect an APF on those anymore. And that's, you know, things like that impact our cash inflows, and so there is some risk there with APFs.
Did you have another comment, Chris?
Yeah, you know, just to continue with that, we also have to remember Arizona also mandated we spend close to $20 million on our water conservation project, right? That money has to come from someplace. So I mean, I think that's how I help justify the increase of the last years and probably the next upcoming years.
Thanks for that. Would you agree or not? Any
Oh,
response?
yes, mhm, absolutely. Yeah, those irrigation projects have to get paid for, and APFs are, boy, they're doing that. That's for sure.
I think again, what we're hearing, there's a lot of we have a lot of responsibility, a lot of things to consider as a part of this. But again, you've given us a lot of information, a lot of great stuff to chew on, and thank you for responding to that. One more quick review, if you could. We talk a lot about budgeting for revenue, budgeting for expenses. I assume that and I should look at the assumptions again. I believe that everything you've put into the staffing budgeting, wage increases and so forth, is that built off of assuming we have 100% staffing, that we're able to fill all these positions?
Yes, absolutely. And there's in the projection, I think we have I don't know, approximately 300,000 in compared to budget in I don't want to call it, I guess it would be savings to budget. So yes, we do budget, and it goes back to that, need versus get by. If we have the get by budgeting perspective, then things suffer, services go away, and because if you got to put a budget together, you have to stick to that budget. So we do budget for those fully staffed 300 FTEs, and then we may finish the year at 290 when you wrap it all together. But again, every penny saved goes into the reserve fund.
Right, thank you. So I know it's been another really long meeting, but these are some of the most important meetings of the year. So thank you, everybody, for being so patient, and thanks. You saw, I just wanted to call out, you saw committee member Jim Scott here, and every single committee member I'm sure has the same, but like pages and pages of notes. There's so much work that goes in. So again, many thanks to not only our finance team, but to budget and finance committee members for all this due diligence. So with that, I'm going to open it up to owner-resident questions and comments. And as if we don't know who you are, please introduce yourself and sign in. I say that because he's already stepped up a few times, but that's quite all right. That's what this is for.
Nick Turner, 131829. I actually have some questions on the expense category detail, which wasn't in the packet this meeting. It was for last meeting, and I haven't had time to look at it. I don't know if you want to take those now or whether I should email them in later.
You're welcome to pose them now. And if you or anyone wants to email them in, christine.novello@suncitywest.com if you did have similar detailed questions. Go ahead, Mr. Turner.
Yeah, it's just a couple on some of the things. Just looking at the percentage increases and so on, I noticed that there's an increase in the sports pavilion for billiard supplies, and it's gone up by something like 50%. I don't know, are we going to be replacing a whole bunch of tables or anything like that?
Yeah, so let me go there. We're going to present that at the Sports Pavilion Committee meeting, but I guess I'll spoiler alert it here. But yeah, there's
or a small one, small spoiler alert. Well, we welcome you to join us at the Sports Pavilion Committee meeting next week.
We can just defer that now.
Yeah, so I'll just say overall, the billiards tables have been neglected. So we did a little bit of work this year to resurface some of those, and we put them on a program. So next year we're going to be doing a double amount, just like this year that we did, as well as the room needs a little freshening up. So we're going to spend some time and resources and painting and doing some, getting some new tables in there and such. So yes.
Does that include a full-size snooker table?
I don't know. That snooker table isn't full size?
No.
Oh, okay.
They're about twice that size. But
oh, wow.
Just a couple of the others as well, just to know a little bit more detail about what's in there. There's a category called equipment, and the description line is equipment.
Yeah, it's a rolled up. It's a rolled up item. Yeah. It's still rolled up because there's different departments.
Yeah, but
divisions.
It's $231,000. So I just wondered what kind of equipment is that?
Oh gosh, that's each. So it's mostly in golf. So that equipment is golf related. So I mean, I don't know if you want to give some color.
I
To
think that's
that
something that we
individual
can,
item, but
if it's acceptable to you, we
yeah,
only have so much
submeeting.
time before we have to vacate for our next committee meeting,
Yeah,
so.
I don't want to take up too much time, but
Your
some of the-
questions are welcome.
Yeah,
So please, you're welcome to email them in and make sure that we get them back to you.
Yeah, it's similarly, there's under operating expenses, there's a line item called operating expenses. I mean, it's not much, but you know, there are
yeah.
other things in there like that. But the other things I was just wondering around is the service contracts, 631,000. What kind of things are in there?
So service contracts are any contract that we have with the software. So could be related to our ticketing system, TEIs in there. That's mainly what that is. And there's some other service related things in there. But I'm happy to send you all the details of what all that stuff is if you need it.
I'll drop an email to Christine and yourself, and then take it from there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yep.
And thanks for those. And again, we invite anyone in the community who may have similar questions. You're welcome to send those in, and we can work offline on getting some of those answers if required. Thank you.
I'm a retired, my name is April Sleva, 133154. I'm a retired accountant from years ago, worked many years with the attorneys. Oh, I loathe attorneys, but I worked for them for over 20 years. Why, I don't know. However, okay, my concerns with the operating or with the wage on slide 10, you said something about it doesn't include golf. If it is, where is it included in golf? And that was, I think, slide number 10.
Okay.
Page 10.
Yeah. Oh.
That one right there. Whereas you've
Yes.
got mini golf, you don't have golf.
Right.
It's a top activity, is it not?
Oh, absolutely. This was just these are just for our rec centers. I should have.
This is recreation center check-in, so
Recreation
that's why it's not
It's
showing
just
golf.
a check-in for recreation centers.
These are rec
Golf.
centers, yeah, and golf I put on there. Golf's 286 or 260 for members and 60 for non-members.
So that's included in the fitness.
No, those
No.
are two separate things.
No,
Okay.
fitness is like
Okay.
the gyms and the walking tracks.
Yep, okay. And one of my major concerns is how did you come up with 4% increase versus the COLA that the rest of us got?
So 4%. So we put 4% in the budget to address a merit increase, which is up to 4%.
Why do we give merit increases? And why are we going at 4% instead of the lower rates? You have a lot of
Yeah.
disabled people living here. You have low income living here. I'm low income. I moved here because it was more convenient physically for me because I can't do a lot of things anymore. However, I didn't get a 4% increase. I don't get additional funds for health care. When they give you when Social Security gives you a 3% increase, how much of that do we really get? Very little. So my concern is we're giving 4% merit and or increases to employees when that is not really, I don't see the necessity of 4%.
Okay. Can I answer that?
I was going to start, but please start.
Oh, you go ahead. Okay, so employees get up to 4%.
Up to
Okay,
4%.
Up to 4%. So
This
the
is a
4%.
budgeting, it's just to establish a fund that would be for cost of living and promotions or merit increases or in addition. So it's just one big fund. Whether we agree with that percentage number or not, that was the intention,
Okay.
so.
So it's up to 4%. And with that, we're not only addressing cost of living increases, but we're also addressing You'll see that one of the other slides, we're at 88% of the average when it comes to salaries and wages for the people that we pay in the positions that they're in. Those are actual pay rates in that study.
Okay, so
So we're addressing, with that 4%, we may need to address some areas, some positions within these areas that we need to stay competitive on, or we need to go to market for a position. So we have to put that in the budget so that we're positioned to do that. If that doesn't happen.
if it comes up and you
Yes.
need to address
And if,
it.
and if that doesn't happen, then those funds stay in the budget and get directed into the reserve fund, which,
Why does it go to the reserve fund and not reduce the budget for the upcoming year based upon the needs, rather than all of our extra money in the budget goes to reserves? Then we're paying more in dues to keep those actual budget items at that rate or higher. Because if you budget 4%, and then if you don't spend it, you throw it into reserves,
so okay.
our dues keep going up. I can't afford $600 a month or a year. When I came here and I paid just over $400 a year. And now in 5 years, it's increased that high. My HOA dues are $300 a month. There's a lot of HOAs that don't charge that, but they also don't have the reserves that we do.
Well, again, very valid questions. Remember, this is the budget process as it exists, okay? We did a study, Budget and Finance Committee did a study together with operations last year on whether or not we should tie some of these increases more directly to Social Security, COLA, et cetera. And you can go back to that study to determine why, but the recommendation of that working group last year was that we should not do that. It would not behoove the benefit of the entire association over time. So you're welcome to go back and review the study at that time. Understand your source of concern. Just wanted you to know that this is the process as we currently have it. And I believe some of what you're outlining is actually in our bylaws as well as our articles of incorporation, which are harder to change.
Yeah, so the funds per policy go in there. But to speak to some of the other comments, we're not recommending a 12% increase so that we can get to average wage. So we do look at it, and we do it in a way where we can still provide the services that we provide, and very conscious of who we're providing services to in this community, and there's a lot of people on fixed income. So, again, we're not proposing 12% increase for wages. We're proposing 4%, and not everybody's going to get a 4%.
No, but your expenditures also increase, and your reserve is also increasing, is it not, for the upcoming year?
Yes.
And what is the reserve budget for? Have you guys gotten to that point of discussion or not?
It's in the presentation that was given today. Yes, in terms of what we expect to have as our reserve fund balance at the end of next year. And remember, our consideration, both as a committee and as a governing board, is for the association as a whole, the health of the association as a whole. We're mandated to keep that fully funded balance 40% or higher, and that's actually very low by comparison to other associations like ours, but that's our mandate.
And are they 55 and above?
Yes, associations like ours tend to have a fully funded balance percentage. Some of our neighbors are much higher because they're using that reserve fund to pay their day-to-day operations or more of that. We do not. Generally, we have most of our operations, as we've covered in the past, are covered through the collection of dues. Not all, but a good portion, more so than others, and through other revenue sources as well.
Yes, I understand that. How many part-time seniors do we have? Not part-time, FTEs, how many are seniors versus external? As he says it's outside of our realm.
Specific to part-time employees?
Full-time and part-time.
We have 200 full-time FTEs in the budget. So 290 part-time FTEs.
And
Plus
of those,
290?
and of those FTEs, Cliff, roughly speaking, what proportion are residents of Sun City West? Vast majority.
Yeah, so, I mean.
We've covered them in the
each one of-
past.
In each
I know.
one of those categories, I don't
We've
remember. I
covered
can-
it in the
I can
past, so
present
we,
it in the next-
it's already been covered in the past in
Yeah.
terms of how many, so we can go back and find that for you if necessary.
And
I'd also like to ask, I'm sorry to put a pause, every resident gets about 2 minutes, and we're over that, so I just wanted to ask
Okay,
for
I
the,
just have one final question.
I just wanted to ask for the committee's consensus to allow Ms. Sleva to continue. Just a nod or a shake of the head.
It's fine.
Everybody okay? It's just part of our process. Thank you,
Okay.
ma'am.
Yep. What is the golf course now running in the black? Are we still compensating the golf course for additional expenditures, et cetera?
Our golf courses are not designed to run in the black. We're not a for-profit organization.
Yeah, but we're not even cutting even or even close to even, are we?
No.
No.
Is that correct, Cliff?
Yeah, that's correct. The golf, in the divisional budget, I think the golf courses are a little over $1 million in terms of revenue versus expenses. The golf courses are an amenity to the community, and if you compare that to pools, it's a pretty good value at $1 million over 7 golf courses.
We have 7 golf
so
courses here?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And how many PGA pros do we have?
5, I believe.
How are they?
We agreed to one more question, and this is continuing.
No,
that's okay.
I understand that you are questioning would you join us, would you have the time to join us at next week's golf committee?
I will be.
I think we've been asked that question a number of times, and I think that.
This is very concerning to me that our rates are going up as far as dues again, annual dues.
Right.
So,
I understand
yes,
and appreciate
I
that.
do anticipate joining the committee meetings from here on out. Thank you for your time.
And thank you for your questions, for you and for all. None of these considerations are made lightly, and it is a continuing challenge. We have to look at the good of the association as a whole, and but we do appreciate, because we live here too, right? We do appreciate what you're saying. So no one wants to see these things increase, but it is just a fact of what we do to look at and consider all of the expenses and make sure that everything is being properly managed to that. So you're welcome to join us there to ask the questions of the golf committee about the number of pros, how they are compensated, and so forth. We have a couple questions online. They both came from Frank Bagnato, which is 117679. There are 23 open positions being reported right now. Are these positions reported in your presentation FTE count? If not, what would be the impact if all openings were filled? Are the wages and benefits for these open positions included in the budget for the new fiscal year?
Yes, they're in both years. The open positions are budgeted this year and budgeted next year. I would say for the most part, yes. I don't know if there's, I haven't looked at the list, but I'm pretty sure everything that's open now is in the budget for next year, yes.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from the committee? Excellent. Seeing none, thank you so much for the update. As a reminder to all on process, right? Same sort of, you saw the dates in Cliff's presentation. We will be making a recommendation as regards the operating budget by the April 1st meeting, our initial recommendation. The governing board will consider that. There may be further changes that come back to us for consideration. The capital budget is on a similar timeline, but the capital budget will be considered and decided upon by the governing board a little earlier. So just bear those in mind. Mr. Bagnato asked a follow-up question. He believes his first question wasn't answered. So there are 23 open positions being reported right now. Are these positions reported in the presentation FTE count? I believe the answer to that question is yes, these positions are reported in the FTE count. I believe that will answer your question, Mr. Bagnato. If not, type it on in and we'll get to it at the end. That concludes our what's on the agenda for 3.04. Again, from a matter of process, I want to remind everybody, we'll go back to what's on the agenda as 3.02, because we do want to give a quick update on the investment strategy. This is something that would be of great interest to our resident who just spoke up and add a bunch of questions. If she has not kept up on it, that would be a great time for her to catch up. So the investment strategy working group has presented a whole series of updates. We do have Rick Rufai, who's here from the working group, who will give a very quick overview. But please remember that this working group continues to work. The goal is to have a strategy, meaning actually to specify what are the policy changes from our existing policy to a future policy, not to rewrite the entire policy, but just to come up with the investment policy strategy changes. And so where do we stand on that, Rick, and what are the next steps?
Okay, I'm gonna read it, just a quick statement. Okay, we have finished the first draft of our investment strategy. The draft includes many of the recommendations coming out of the working group analysis. This includes setting up categories for future expenditures, placing ranges on each level, and setting an aggregate target for the entire portfolio. We have also installed some guardrails around staying the course strategy. It also has a complete list of investment options within each category. We have also left room for some flexibility to let our investment advisor actively manage the portfolio. In creating this draft, we have used AI technology to ensure the wording works within industry standards and help eliminate future changes. I want to thank David here because David's been my go-to person for the AI strategy. So within the next few weeks, the working group has come together to finalize a strategy and present it to the finance and budget team for review and approval. All meetings for the working group will be published to allow the community to see the results of our work and be able to add comments. Okay, that's it.
Thanks, Rick. To put a finer point on that, we expect to have at least one working group meeting scheduled next week. Once we compare our schedules and calendars and so forth, we'll get those posted. I'll make sure that everyone on this committee is aware, the entire community will be aware, but this committee as well, so that you can join in, as several of you already have, so you can get some previews or have your comments reflected in the future. The timing on this, remember, from a priority standpoint, this is very important to all of us and to the community as a whole, but the budgeting deadlines are a higher priority in terms of near term. So just please bear that in mind, everybody. We want to make sure that we are achieving and meeting those budget timelines. We have until June 30th to complete our work on the policy, and we will do so. There will be a recommendation or a series of recommendations made to the governing board to wrap up all the work of the working group. So please rest easy with that. We'll be meeting at least once next week, timing to be determined, and we'll keep plowing forward. There'll be another update at our future meeting. So again, thank you so much. Are there any not comments, please, but do you have specific questions, members of the committee, for Rick? Excellent. Any questions from our community? Those of you who have hung tight in here, thank you so much. So seeing none, thanks again for the update. That wraps up new business. Committee comments is 4.01. In the interest of time, I'm going to encourage you guys to make succinct comments, please, if you have any. And we will start with you, Jim. For a change, because we always start on the end, so why not start in the middle? Didn't mean to surprise you.
Thank you. Yeah, really just a couple. Thank you, Cliff. Thank you, Kyle. Great dialogue. And really just an observation. Thank you, ma'am, for coming in and participating in the discussion of the Budget and Finance Committee. One out of the entire lecture hall, it's disappointing from a community member to see the community engagement. I just can't encourage it more to get involved and understand how our community operates and understand it. So thank you.
Hear, hear. Hope to see more of you. Ed, any questions or comments?
No comments, no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Rick?
I just want to say, thanks, Cliff, did a great job, and I look forward to finalizing this and moving forward.
David?
No comments.
No comments.
Excellent. Again, I just want to echo the thanks from the committee and from me. Thanks for being so responsive to our questions so far, to Cliff and team, really to the entire ops team for all the details presented today. I know that we have a lot of questions. That's what we're here to do. And do want to thank all of the owner residents who took the time to participate today online and in person. Please tell your friends and welcome them to come here, to listen online. And if you're listening to this after the fact, please feel free to send those comments in to me one more time, christine.novello@suncitywest.com. We're always looking for your input. This is one of the most important things that we do. So everything that we're working on is of importance. Tell your friends, bring them here. We welcome them. I also, again, want to thank the committee members. I know I've already said that, but the committee works very, very hard, putting in a great deal of effort. Your engagement is fantastic. I'm really grateful to all the work, for all the work that you do. As I mentioned, there are two important, all of our committees meet at least once a month, but two committees meeting next week. Sports Pavilion is meeting on the 12th at 9 a.m. and the Golf Committee is meeting on the 13th at 1:30 p.m. Both of them right here. Please join me and some members of the Budget and Finance. We'll see more details on some of the fee structures and so forth so that we can come back and ask cogent questions at our next meeting. Any other questions or comments from our resident owners who are here, who are still here?
I just want to say that I know you guys have a very difficult job. Been there, done that. It's not easy.
If you couldn't hear her online, the comment was she understands that we have a difficult job, but we thank you very much for being here. Please return and ask more questions. Anything else? I don't see anything else online. We did answer Mr. Bagnato's questions, so we invite you to our next committee meeting on March 18th, 2025. It will be 9 a.m. right here in the lecture hall. So with that, I adjourn the meeting at 2:02 p.m. Thank you. Oh, 12:02 p.m. It felt like 4 hours. I'm joking. Thank you.